lovely night wanderers. Welcome back to Nocturne Library. Or welcome in if you're new here. I'm Ava Calloway, and I'm really glad you've chosen to spend a little quiet time with me tonight. Go ahead and get yourself comfortable before we begin. Let the lights stay low. Tuck yourself into whatever cozy corner you've claimed for the evening. Maybe put your headphones on if you like that close, cocooned feeling. And just give yourself permission to be done for the day. Nowhere to be, nothing to solve, nothing to keep track of. Tonight's story was written by the wonderful Nora Fielding, and it's one of those especially soft, rain-soaked ones that feels like stepping out of the world for a while. We'll be making our way to a secluded stone cabin in a Highlands Glen, with terraced hot spring pools just outside, steaming gently as dusk settles in. There's rain on stone, warm water against cool air, the comfort of a towel, and a doorway lit from within. And that lovely in-between hour where evening slowly loosens into night. It's a very unhurried journey tonight. Not much happens in the best possible way. You'll simply soak, listen, warm yourself, breathe, and drift through the same quiet sensations as they return again and again, softer each time. If you enjoy stories like this, a like or subscribe always helps support the channel, and I'm so grateful when you do. All right, let your shoulders drop a little. Take one easy, unforced breath in, and a slow breath out. And when you're ready, let's begin Chapter 1. Chapter 1. The doorway at Rowanbrae. Rain beads on your face and gathers at the edge of your jaw as you cross the flagstones toward the bothy. Each stone darkened almost black by the weather. Each joint shining with a thin seam of water. The slate roof is already speaking in its own way above you. A close, even tapping that is different from the rain on your skin. Under the oak lintel, there will be the threshold pause. And after that, the heat of the upper eye beneath St. Bride's spout. And later, the broad water of the middle mirror. And later still, the darker lower lantern below, where dusk settles first. For now, there is only the short crossing from open rain to the deep doorway, and the feel of wet cloth against your calves, and the smell of stone giving back the day's damp. The bothy sits low against the hillside, built close to the ground, as if that were the most natural place for it. Rain threads down the face of the stone and drops from the eaves in straight silver lines when your hand finds the latch. The metal is colder than the rain itself, and your thumb pauses there for a moment, feeling the clean bite of it before you press. The door opens inward on a wedge of warmth. Not a strong indoor heat, not the sort that dries the air or pushes the weather away, but the stored warmth of stone, cloth, and banked fire. Just inside, the black iron rail runs along the wall of the deep doorway, and over it hang the towels folded by Mary. Thick linen with the faded red stripe near the edge. The top towel is warm clear through when you lift it. Its weight surprises your hands at first, damp air making the linen feel denser, and then the heat reaches your palms and steadies there. This is the threshold pause. You step in out of the rain, but do not hurry farther. The door stays open behind you, enough that the weather remains part of the room. You shake a little water from your sleeves, not much, and unfold the towel. The linen opens with a soft drag where the layers part. Then you bring it around your shoulders and across your chest, and the warmth settles over the back of your neck, down between your shoulder blades, along your upper arms. Your face is still cool with rain. That first contrast arrives before anything else does. Cool on the brow and cheeks, warmth gathering over the body. You stand beneath the lintel and breathe. The doorway is deep enough that you are neither fully inside nor out. Rain still reaches you in a fine drift if the air shifts. The slate roof gathers and releases the water above with a pattern your ear begins sorting without effort. Close tapping overhead. A heavier drip from the corner by the step. The finer patter where runoff lands on the flagstones. Somewhere beyond, out in the Glen, the burn carries on at its own lower note, softened by distance and weather, until it seems woven through the rain rather than separate from it. The towel warms further where it touches you. Linen heated on the rail has a dry, grainy feel at first, then eases as it takes in a little of the damp from your skin. You draw the edges closer together. The red stripe passes under your fingers, smoothed pale by years of washing. Mary folds them square, always the same way, corners aligned, stripes nested one over another. You notice that order without needing to think much about it. It is part of the room, the same as the rail and the latch, and the slight hollow worn in the threshold stone by many wet feet. Inside, beyond the doorway, the hearthroom lies in half-light. A peat fire has been banked low. You do not look at it for long, only register the muted crackle from deeper in the room, and the faint, dark sweetness of peat smoke mixed with damp wool, stone, and spring minerals. On the window ledge, the blue mugs stand in a row, their glaze crazed from heat and years of wet weather. They catch what little light remains and return it dully. More color than shine. You stay where you are. The pause is not long by the clock, but it changes the body's pace. Out in the rain, crossing the stones, there is always a little gathering of movement in the muscles, a small readiness against the cold. Here, under the lintel, wrapped in warmth, that readiness loosens. Your shoulders drop a fraction. Your jaw unclenches. Water cools on your face, while the towel brings heat into the upper back and chest. You become aware of your breathing, not because you are told to notice it, but because the air is different here. Rain cooled at the doorway, warmer near the wall, carrying a trace of iron from the spring channel outside. You can smell the pools from here, if you know the scent well enough. Mineral water has its own air around it. St. Bride's Spout feeds the upper basin through the carved stone channel. And when the rain is steady, the smell rises more clearly. Iron and wet rock together, with a faint green note from the mineral rim where water has passed and passed again. You will go there first. The upper pool is the hottest and the smallest, close enough beneath the spout that the sound of falling water fills the space around your head and shoulders. You know this already, in the way a hand knows the shape of a familiar cup. But there is no need to move yet. Another breath. The towel gives a little more. The warmth reaches down your arms and begins to ease the chill from your hands. Your fingertips, cold a moment ago from the latch and the rain, now press into the linen and feel both textures at once. The roughness of the weave and the heat stored inside it. A drop runs from your hairline down along your temple. It is cool enough to make you blink. Then it is gone. The open door frames only a small portion of the evening. Wet stone, a strip of dark heather beyond, steam rising and thinning where the pools lie lower on the terrace. You do not need a full view to know the shape of the place. The cabin sits above the run of the 3 basins cut into the hillside, each one taking the water in turn. Above them, the slope of Meall Liath is hidden in rain for now. Below, the Glen opens into Rowanbrae, though at this hour it is less a vista than a dimness beyond the steam. A hollow receiving weather. A faint settling sound comes from within the bothy, one timber answering another as the damp changes. Then the small, dry click of porcelain as one of the blue mugs shifts almost imperceptibly on the ledge, perhaps nudged by the door's movement, or by the old unevenness of the stone beneath the sill. It is hardly a sound at all, but in the doorway, your hearing has sharpened enough to catch it. Rain overhead, drip from the eaves, peat in the hearth, porcelain at the window, cloth against skin. The opening keeps the sound of the rain full in the room. The tapping on the slate roof remains distinct. The drops on the threshold clear, each surface giving the same weather a different voice. The room behind you holds its dim half-light. The doorway remains a shelter and a passage at once. Your feet feel the difference too. The flagstones inside are not warm exactly, but they are no longer receiving the rain. Their chill is steady rather than sharp. Water from your soles leaves darker marks that begin to fade at the edges almost at once. The threshold stone itself is smoother than the others, worn by use and polished by wet leather, bare heels, and years of weather carried in and out. You shift your weight there and feel how gently it dips under the arch of your foot. The towel slips a little, and you lift one hand to settle it again around your shoulders. The edge brushes the side of your neck. Linen has a firmer hand than cotton. It does not cling. It rests. That matters here. It allows the body to cool where the rain has touched your face, and warm where the cloth lies over skin. It leaves room for the air between. This is how the evening begins to teach its rhythm. Not through instruction, only through repetition. You can already sense before it happens. Step from rain to doorway. Pause under the lintel. Warmth on shoulders. Coolness on face. Then back out across wet stone to water hot enough to change your breath for a moment when you first enter. Then back again. Towel, doorway, roof, steam, and out once more. The shape of it is simple enough that you do not need to keep hold of it. It will return on its own. In the near corner by the rail, more towels are stacked in their square folds, red stripes aligned. The top one has a slight crease where it was turned back earlier in the day, and the linen there catches more of the fire's dim glow. Nothing in the room asks to be admired. Each thing is already in use, even when still. You breathe in again and catch the spring more clearly now, perhaps because the rain has shifted. The old saying comes, as it often does in weather like this, not solemnly, just as a phrase that fits the body well. Rain belongs to the face, and spring water to the bones. You do not need to weigh it or test it. Standing here, with cool droplets on your forehead and the heated towel across your shoulders, it feels less like belief than simple description. Outside, the steam thickens for a moment and then thins. Some current of air has changed over the terraces. You can see it only in the way the view opens and closes by degrees. The upper path glistens. The edge of one pool appears, then disappears behind mist. A runoff thread from the hillside crosses the far stone and drops somewhere out of sight with a regular ticking sound, slower than the rain. Your breathing has lengthened without your meaning to lengthen it. The towel is no longer merely warm. It has become part of your own temperature. And because of that, the coolness on your face is easier to feel, more precise. Brow, nose, lips. The line of your chin, where one last drop gathers before falling. Shoulders, upper chest. The small hollow at the base of the throat, warmed by linen, and the air just inside the doorway. Hands tucked under the towel for a moment, fingers loosening, calves still damp from the walk across the stones, feet adjusting to the steadier chill of the floor. From farther in the room comes another low crackle from the banked peat. Then stillness again. Not silence. The room is never silent in rain. It settles and answers and receives. The roof taps. The doorway drips. The Glen carries water downward in channels you cannot see from here. Somewhere beyond the steam, the pools continue filling and spilling from one terrace to the next. You remain beneath the oak lintel for another breath, and another, wrapped in the towel from the rail, the door left open behind you, your face cool and your shoulders warm, while the rain keeps to its steady work on slate, stone, and skin. Chapter 2. Under St. Bride's Spout. You remain beneath the oak lintel for one more breath. The warmed linen still around your shoulders. The doorway open just enough to keep the rain near. Then your hand finds the towel's edge and loosens it. The cloth falls from your neck with a little weight. still warm where it has rested against you, cooler at the corners where the damp air has reached it. You fold it once without hurry and set it back over the black iron rail, where the heat will gather into it again. The stone under your bare feet is colder now for having been noticed. Just inside, it keeps a stored indoor chill. And just beyond the threshold, the flagstones are rinsed dark with rain. You stand for another moment in that narrow difference. 1 foot nearer the bothy, 1 foot nearer the weather. And then you step out. Rain touches your face at once. Not hard, not sparse either, but steady enough that each drop is part of a larger surface of coolness. It catches first on your brow and nose, and then begins to bead along your cheeks. Your shoulders, newly uncovered, take the air before they take the wet. The warmth from the towel does not vanish all at once. It stays close to the skin for a few steps, like heat held in stone after a hand has left it. The way to the upper terrace is short. That is one of the good things here. Nothing is far from anything else. Doorway, flagstone, step, basin, and back again. The evening narrows itself to these distances. You cross the slick stones with care, but without effort. Your soul's learning each flat place and each shallow dip where rainwater gathers. A thread of runoff slips along one groove in the path and spills over the edge into darker grass. Somewhere below, beyond the next terrace and the next, the wider basin of the middle mirror lies under steam. But you do not look there yet. Your attention rises instead toward the highest pool, where the spring comes in close from the hill. The upper basin is small enough that you feel you are approaching not a pond, but a cup of water set into the slope. The stone lip is dark with wet, except where the minerals have left their pale rims, a chalking of orange and green and cream around the channel. Above it, St. Bride's Spout gives its narrow run without show. Water threads from the carved stone mouth in one bright line, breaks against the receiving lip, and enters the pool with a sound finer than a pour from a kettle, and steadier than any hand could manage. You smell the spring before you lower yourself to it. The air here carries that faint iron scent the spout always leaves behind. Not sharp, only present, mingling with wet stone and heather, and the clean, dark smell of rain. It is a scent that settles low in the breath. You take it in and know, even before touching the water, that this basin will be the hottest of the evening. Steam rises from the surface in thin drifts that alter with every touch of rain. Where droplets strike, the skin of the pool dimples and opens and closes again. Where the spout enters, the surface is always moving, a bright trembling under the runnel. Elsewhere, it darkens to mineral brown, almost black in the deepening dusk, reflecting only broken pieces of the sky. You stand at the edge for a moment and let your toes test the first reach of heat. The response is immediate. Your feet, chilled from the stones, meet water so warm it almost feels bright. ankles next, then the lower shins. The body does what it always does before surrendering to heat. Pauses, measures, takes one breath more. You place your hand on the stone rim, damp beneath your palm, and lower yourself by degrees. The water closes around your calves, your knees, the fronts of your thighs. Rain continues on your face and shoulders, while the pool takes the rest of you into its own temperature. The contrast is clear enough that you do not have to think about it. Your skin tells you first. Cool above, heat below. Air on the brow, spring at the hips. You lower another inch, then another, until the water reaches the small of your back and your breath changes, deepening on its own. The upper basin does not allow for sprawling. It receives you more closely than the larger pools will later. Here, you settle in a gathered way, knees bent, feet planted against stone worn smooth by use. Your hand slides along the inner wall to find a place to rest. The rock has a satin feel under the water, polished by years of mineral flow and by bodies easing themselves down exactly as you are doing now. When you sink far enough for the heat to come around your waist and lower ribs, your shoulders lift instinctively against the rain. Then, after a breath or two, they let go. The water reaches your chest. Your back meets the curved stone. The hottest current enters near the spout and spreads through the basin in slow folds, so that one knee may feel a little more heat than the other, one hip a stronger seam of rising warmth. You make a small adjustment and find the place where it gathers best around you. Now your body begins to sort itself. Toes uncurl. The muscles at the fronts of your thighs loosen first, then the deeper grip around the hips. Heat moves into the low back like a hand placed there and left there. Your shoulders, still out in the rain, remain cool enough to notice each drop, but the line beneath your collarbones has already changed. The spring works inward. It does not rush. The spout continues its narrow pouring. Runoff from the carved lip threads down the outside stone and falls in little side streams that tick against the basin wall before joining the pool. Each one leaves a ring that travels outward until it meets the wider shiver of rain. Surface answering surface. A pattern forms and reforms without ever needing to become still. You tilt your face upward a little and let the rain land where it will. Forehead, eyelids, mouth. The drops are colder now by contrast, and because of that, they feel more exact. One gathers at the edge of your jaw before slipping down your neck into water hotter than itself. Another catches in your eyelashes and blurs the spout for a moment. You blink, and the stone mouth comes back into focus, pale at the edges where the minerals have crusted there over time. There is an old saying for this hill water, one you have heard often enough that it arrives without effort. Rain belongs to the face, and spring water to the bones. It is not something you need to examine. In a place like this, it lands as simply as the weather does. Rain belongs to the face, and spring water to the bones. The words pass through you the way the temperatures do. One cool, one warm, each where it should be. You breathe in through the nose and catch the iron trace again. Breathe out, and the air just above the pool feels warmer than the rain beyond it. Steam brushes your chin. Your ears fill with layered sound. The close pour from the spout, the fine stippling of rain on the pool, the broader taps of rain on flagstone behind you, and farther off, through all of it, the burn making its own steady way through the glen. Nothing competes. The sounds lie together the way the waters do, each taking its level. A drop from the spout's splash reaches your shoulder colder than the basin and makes you smile without needing a reason. The upper pool has that effect. It is small enough that every change is near you. The incoming thread of spring, the rebound from stone, the tiny cooling where rain lands on exposed skin, the stronger heat that rises from below your knees. None of it is distant. You can feel the place where the spring enters and the place where the evening enters, and your body sits between them. The rain darkens the hair at your temples. Water runs behind one ear and down the side of your neck. Beneath that line of coolness, your chest is warm to the sternum, your belly warmer still, your thighs almost heavy with heat. The difference between upper air and lower water becomes less startling after a few minutes and more dependable. You stop bracing against it. You let it arrange you. Your fingers trail through the basin beside you. The water there is silky with minerals, not slippery exactly, but fuller than ordinary rainwater, fuller than the spring water in a mug. When you lift your hand, droplets cling to your knuckles and then return one by one. The skin of your palm turns pink in the heat. Your wrist, where it rises into the rain, cools at once. The evening has not darkened much yet, but it has begun. The glen beyond the upper terrace is already less detailed than it was from the doorway. Heather on the slope has become a softened band of dusk purple and brown. Mist from higher up the hill has not descended far enough to hide anything, though the air above the stones is thickening where steam meets rain. You can still make out the line of the path below and the low shape of the bothy, its doorway still open behind you, a dim square cut into stone. You settle more firmly against the basin wall. The heat under your shoulder blades deepens, as if the rock itself has stored some part of the spring. Your knees drift apart by an inch. Your jaw unclenches. Even the soles of your feet, pressed to the sloped floor of the pool, begin to soften from their careful work on the wet flagstones. You had not noticed they were still gripping until they stop. The spout keeps on. The rain keeps on. Between them, steam lifts and thins and gathers again. At times, the surface of the upper eye seems almost stippled silver where the rain strikes hardest. Then the pattern shifts, and the pool goes dark again, with only the pale mineral rim showing at the edge, like a chalk line in dusk. You do not need to move much here. A slight turn of the head changes the sound. A slight shift of the hips finds a warmer current passing under the waterline. If you lean a little closer to the spout, the heat strengthens around the upper back. If you ease away, the rain on your shoulders becomes easier to notice. You make these adjustments the way one turns a pillow to the cooler side or draws a blanket higher by habit, without breaking the restfulness of the thing. Rain belongs to the face, and spring water to the bones. By the second time the saying returns, it is less like a phrase and more like a description of what is happening already. Your brow is cool. Your cheeks are wet. The bridge of your nose catches each drop cleanly. Beneath that, the heat has gone deeper than the skin. It has entered the knees, the hips, the base of the spine. Your ribs expand more easily. Your breath takes longer on the way out. A little rivulet forms on the outer lip of the basin where the rainwater gathers and spills over. You watch it for a while. It thickens, narrows, disappears, forms again. Beside it, the mineral staining on the stone glows faintly in the dim light, pale orange against dark, wet rock, green where the water has run longest. The marks are not decorative. They are simply what the spring leaves behind after years of doing the same thing. You dip one shoulder lower, then the other, until the water nearly reaches the base of your neck. Only your face remains fully in the rain now, and the contrast sharpens once more in a way that feels newly good. Cool forehead, warm throat, cool lips, warm chest. The body understands repetition when it is this clear. It begins to trust the next sensation before it arrives. After a while, you close your eyes. The upper pool becomes sound and temperature first, shape second. The spout is a close silver thread in the ear. Rain is a finer texture over the brow and lashes. Heat gathers around the hips and along the backs of the thighs. The stone at your spine is firm, slick, and familiar already. You breathe, and with each breath, your body settles another fraction lower into the basin's exact size. When you open your eyes again, the rain has made fresh rings across the surface. A bead of water hangs from the carved lip of the spout before joining the stream. Beyond the pool, the flagstones shine darkly. The bothy stands where you left it, lintel blackened with wet, towels warming inside for later. But you do not need the doorway yet. For now, you stay under the spout, your face in the rain and your bones in the spring, while the hottest water of the evening moves steadily around you, and the dusk lowers by such small degrees that only the stone, the breath, and the weather keep count. Chapter 3. Rain on slate, rain on skin. When you rise from the upper eye, you do it by degrees, as if the water has changed the pace of your joints. One hand finds the wet stone lip beneath the spout. The other steadies against the mineral slick edge, where pale orange and green have gathered over years of flow. Hot water slips from your shoulders in narrow streams. Rain takes its place at once on your face, cooler than before, almost startling for a breath, then simply true again. You stand in the shallow margin long enough for the heat to leave the surface of your skin in little threads. The carved channel above keeps pouring its bright line into the basin. Runoff dimples the pool where you have just been. Your feet search for the familiar flatness of the flagstone path. And when you step out, the air presses close and damp around your chest and upper arms. The old saying comes back without effort, not as anything to remember on purpose, only as the shape the evening has already taken. Rain to the face, spring water to the bones. The walk back is short. It feels shorter now that your body has learned the distance. Wet stone underfoot. One turn past the terrace wall. The low shape of the bothy ahead, with its slate roof darkened nearly black by rain. Water falls from the eaves in a steady fringe. The doorway is a deeper dark beneath the oak lintel, and inside it, the iron rail keeps its line of warmth. You cross the last flagstones, with droplets cooling on your shoulders and forearms. The threshold stone is smoother than the path outside, worn by many feet and by weather carried in and out. As soon as you step under the lintel, the rain changes character. It is still there, close enough to reach a hand into, but it no longer lands directly on your skin. Instead, it spreads itself into surfaces and distance. On the slate overhead, on the stones beyond the step, on the terrace walls, on the water you have just left. You lift a towel from the black iron rail. Thick linen, warmed through, edged with that faded red stripe that always appears darker in damp weather. The cloth has weight to it. When you open it around your shoulders, the first touch is almost dense, as if the heat has substance. It settles across the back of your neck, over your collarbones, down your upper arms. Damp skin answers at once. A cool bead runs from your hairline to your cheek and disappears into the weave. This is the threshold. Pause again, though there is no need to name it in your mind. You have already stepped back into it. A few breaths just inside. Rain still audible. Warmth gathered close. No hurry toward the next basin. No need yet to decide whether you will go down to the broader water or remain by the door a little longer. You ease the door inward until it is nearly closed, and the latch gives a small iron click against the frame without catching. Left there, not shut, only narrowed, the opening changes the sound once more. Rain on the slate roof becomes rounder, more gathered. It no longer strikes your face in separate touches. It arranges itself above you in thousands of fine contacts at once. A close roof sound, steady and layered. Beyond that, lower down, rain on flagstones answers with a flatter note. Somewhere farther still, where the path drops past the terraces, runoff threads through channels in the stone with a lighter, quicker sound. You stand and listen long enough to hear the differences sort themselves. On your skin, rain had been individual. A drop on the brow, another at the corner of the mouth, a line down the throat. On the slate, it becomes a field of taps, softened by distance and by the roof's dark weight. On the stones outside, it is more broken. Little impacts and rebounds. Out by the upper pool, under the spout, there had been the narrow fall of spring water striking water, bright and exact. Here in the doorway, all of it comes together, not muddled, only layered, each part keeping its own place. The towel warms further where it touches you. Your shoulders lower without your deciding to lower them. The damp at the backs of your knees begins to cool. Your hands, still wet, slide once over the linen at your upper arms, feeling the rougher nap raised by years of washing and drying. Mary folds them square, and they keep that order even after use. The corners still meet when you draw the cloth closer. Inside, beyond the doorway, the hearthroom keeps its own hush, not silence. The peat has been banked low, and now and then it gives a muted crackle, more felt in the ear than heard outright. A small, settling sound moves through the timber somewhere deeper in the cabin. A brief tick from wood adjusting to damp and heat. The floor under your feet has a little give beneath the boards nearest the threshold. Familiar and slight. You notice these things because the rain has thinned your attention to one sense at a time. The air in the doorway has layers too. Coolness near the open gap where rain can still blow in as fine mist. Stored warmth nearer the inner wall. The faint mineral trace from the upper spring still clings to your skin, iron and wet stone together. Behind that sits the darker smell of damp slate, and under it, from the hearthroom, the dry, earthy breath of peat. You shift your weight from one foot to the other. Water marks the threshold board beneath you. A drop falls from your elbow to the stone with a small sound that would have vanished if the roof were not taking the rain for you now. Another slips from the end of your hair into the towel at your shoulder. The cloth drinks it in. There is comfort in hearing the roof do what roofs do. The slate takes the weather and turns it into pattern. You can tell, standing here, where the rain is heaviest, by the deeper run along the eaves, where it gathers before falling. You can hear the smaller patter where wind drives it against the sidewall. Over the doorway itself, the sound is close and dense. A dark roof sound that seems to steady the breath into longer lengths. You let those lengths come. Air in, carrying the damp chill left by rain across your face. Air out, warmer now from the towel and the lingering heat of the spring. Your face remains uncovered, and the contrast sharpens there first. Cheeks cool, shoulders warm, forehead damp, chest slowly drying under linen. The body begins to understand the evening by these exchanges, rather than by thought. The nearly closed door shifts once on its hinges, with a small wooden complaint. then settles back. Through the narrow opening, you can still see the rain silvering the nearest flagstones. The light outside has changed since you went up to the upper eye. Not dramatically, only enough that the wet stone reflects less of the sky and more of itself. The terrace wall opposite has gone deeper in color. Steam crossing the path shows for a moment, then thins. You could step farther in. The hearth room is there, with its banked peat and the blue mugs on the ledge, the dim pane of the window carrying beads of rain. But the doorway keeps you in the exact middle of things. And for now, that middle is enough. Behind you, dry boards and settled heat. Before you, wet stone and the terraces. Around your shoulders, the warmed weight of linen. Across your face, air that still remembers rain. Another small sound comes from outside. Water dropping from one higher stone to another before reaching the path. You follow it with your ear until it disappears into the broader hush. Then the roof returns to the front of hearing again. Slate has a way of making rain sound measured, almost counted. Skin makes it immediate. Stone makes it scatter. Water makes it answer itself. You think, without needing to shape the thought fully, that this is why the pause matters. Not simply for warmth, though the warmth is good. Not only to dry the hands or gather yourself before stepping out again. It is for this change in listening. Outside, the weather meets you directly. Inside the doorway, the weather becomes many things at once, and your mind, having less to do, begins to hear each one. The towel loosens a little at one shoulder, and you draw it up again. The linen drags warmly over damp skin. At the nape of your neck, where heat from the spring still sits deepest, the cloth almost steams. Your fingers tuck the edge in across your chest. The red stripe passes under your thumb, faded, familiar. Below the towel, your ribs move steadily. Your breathing has lost the slight quickness of entering hot water. It has found the slower pace that follows. From the hearth room comes a faint ceramic click. No more than one mug settling against another on the ledge as the old boards shift. The sound is so small you almost miss it. It belongs to the room in the same way the latch belongs to the door, and the roof belongs to the rain. Not decoration, only use. The bothy has its own set of replies to weather. Timber ticks. Slate taps. Peat settles in the grate. Linen warms on iron. Water darkens the threshold stone, and then dries again. You stay long enough for your calves to cool, and for the deeper heat in your back and hips to remain. This, too, is part of the rhythm. The warmth does not leave all at once. It retreats slowly from the skin, while staying in the joints, in the shoulders, along the length of the spine. You can feel where the spring has reached you most fully. Across the shoulder blades, into the small of the back, through the thighs where you had bent to lower yourself beneath the spout. Rain touched the surface. The spring went farther in. Outside, the rain continues with no change in tempo. Yet your hearing keeps finding new edges in it. A heavier run from the roof corner, a softer sift where mist drifts through the opening, the distant burn down in the glen, nearly folded into the weather now, but still there if you listen beneath the nearer sounds. Once, from somewhere beyond the terraces, a sheep bell reaches you as a blurred note, and then is gone. The door stands as you left it, almost closed, a narrow seam of weather and dimness at its edge. You rest one hand on the inner face of it. The wood is cool where damp air has touched it, warmer toward the middle. Under your palm, you can feel the faintest tremor when a stronger run of water passes from the eaves outside and strikes the stone below. Not enough to call movement, only enough to know the cabin is meeting the weather board by board, slate by slate. When you let go, your hand keeps the shape of the wood's chill for a moment. You tuck that hand under the towel at your opposite arm, and warmth returns to the fingers by degrees. It is a small exchange, simple enough to repeat without thought. Cool edge, warm linen, rain on face, spring in the bones, roof above, hearth behind. The evening teaches itself through these pairings. At last, you draw one fuller breath and feel that the pause has done what it does. Not finished anything, only settled the first bright heat of the upper pool into something steadier. The rain is no less present than before. The glen has not altered in any way that matters, but your attention has narrowed and deepened. You hear the slate more clearly. You feel the towel more exactly where it rests on your shoulders. The room beyond the doorway has grown dimmer by a shade, and outside the terraces have done the same. You do not move at once. You remain another breath, then another, while the peat gives one low crackle in the hearthroom, and the rain keeps its many notes on roof and stone. The door stays ajar for the sake of hearing. The towel stays warm across your neck, and in that narrow, sheltered space between the dark boards inside and the wet flagstones beyond, you stand listening until the next step begins to form of its own accord. Chapter 4. The Broad Water of the Middle Mirror. The next step comes without much thought. You loosen the towel from your shoulders, fold it once, and leave it on the warm rail just inside the door. The linen gives up its heat reluctantly, and for a moment, you feel the difference all at once. The stored warmth at your neck, the cooler air along your arms, the dampness still drying at the backs of your knees from the upper eye. Then you ease the door wider and step out beneath the oak lintel into the rain again. The flagstones are darker now than when you first crossed them. Water has settled into every shallow dip and seam, and your feet know where the stone lies flatter, where the edge of one slab rises a little above the next. Rain touches your face at once, cool and fine, and the air beyond the doorway carries a mingling of wet slate, heather, and the faint iron trace drifting down from the spout above. Behind you, the bothy keeps its banked peat warmth, and the smell of linen dried and warmed and used again. Ahead, the terraces descend by short degrees into steam. You do not turn back toward the upper basin. The heat of it still lives in your skin, bright and concentrated, especially along your shins and the fronts of your thighs, where you sat nearest the flow. Instead, you take the path down, one hand brushing the damp stone wall as you go. The wall is slick with rain, its roughness softened by moss in the joints, and your palm comes away beaded with water. Below, the broader pool shows itself in pieces at first. A low breath of steam moving sideways in the rain. A dark oval of surface. The pale line of stone at the rim. The middle mirror lies wider in the hillside than the upper pool. Not so enclosed, not so intent. From above, it always looks as though a larger piece of evening has settled there. Up close, that feeling remains. The basin spreads enough that you can see the rain making separate marks across it before those marks flatten and disappear. Steam lifts, thins, gathers again. Where warmer water rises from below, the surface smokes more densely. Where rain cools the topmost skin, the steam opens and lets the dimming sky show through in a muted gray-blue. Beside the pool, the cedar stool stands where it always does, its slats darkened by damp and years of use. The wood holds a resin scent that comes out more clearly in wet weather. Not sharp, just a dry sweetness under the smell of rain. On it rests a folded towel, thick linen with the faded red stripe turned inward where it has been squared and stacked by practiced hands. The brass lantern sits near it, unlit, its metal beaded with droplets. In this light, it gives back almost nothing, only a dull gleam where rain has not yet cooled it fully from the day indoors. You touch the towel first, not to take it, but to know where it is. The top fold is dry and warm enough still, having been brought out only recently, and that small fact settles into you as usefully as a handrail. You set it within easier reach, one corner loosened. Then stand a moment beside the basin while rain darkens your shoulders. The stone edging is broader here than at the upper eye, flatter underfoot, and the pool itself sits lower, so that entering it asks less of your balance and more of your willingness to sink. You lower yourself by degrees. One foot finds the submerged ledge, then the other. The first contact is not the startling heat of the upper pool, but a steadier warmth, deep and even, as if the water has had longer to spread itself out. It closes around your ankles, your calves, your knees. The rain on your face sharpens as the rest of you warms. You bend and let your hands take the stone lip for support. The edge is slick, but broad enough to trust. Then you ease down further, the water reaching your thighs, your hips, the small of your back. By the time your shoulders enter, your breath has already changed. It lengthens without effort. The muscles across your chest and between your shoulder blades release one by one, not dramatically, simply by losing interest in staying braced. You feel the difference between the two pools at once. In the upper eye, you perched close to the fall, gathered into the hottest part of the spring. Here, the warmth surrounds more evenly. It does not press so hard. It spreads under you. Your weight shifts, and the basin takes some part of it. You let your head tip back just enough for rain to find your forehead and cheeks. Cool drops strike the bridge of your nose, your eyelids, your mouth. Beneath that, the water keeps your neck and shoulders in a broad band of heat. Rain to the face, spring water to the bones. The saying comes back in the same plain words as before, not as something to remember correctly, only as the shape the contrast takes in the mind, when the contrast is exact enough to name itself. The middle mirror is broad enough that you need not sit upright unless you want to. You shift once more, sliding your hips a little forward until your heels skim the floor of the basin, and your back finds a balance between sinking and floating. The water rises under your shoulder blades and along your ribs. Your arms drift away from your sides. The rain marks your face and the tops of your knees where they break the surface. And the rest of you is carried. Not lifted high, only carried enough that the joints stop doing so much work. Ripples move away from you in rings that reach the far edge and come back altered. You can feel the returning pattern against your upper arms, a faint pulse after the first outward spread. Rain adds its own texture over everything, a field of tiny dimples that erase the clearer circles almost at once. When the shower thickens for a minute, the pool surface grows busier, stippled silver gray. When it eases, the steam closes over parts of the water again, and the surface darkens to a mineral sheen. You notice how differently sound behaves here. At the upper eye, the narrow fall from the spout kept one bright note at your shoulder, always present. Here, the water speaks more in surfaces than in streams. Rain touching the pool, overflow slipping from one terrace to the next. A low movement under the basin, where the spring keeps feeding upward. The distant burn in the Glen reaches you only now and then, softened by weather. From the bothy, when the wind shifts, comes the smallest suggestion of the door left ajar, and the peat settling in the hearth room beyond. The light has altered while you moved, though not enough to ask for notice. It simply reaches less far into the hollow than it did. The heather on the slope above has lost some of its color, becoming more a texture than a patchwork of purple and brown. The shoulder of Meall Liath is there when the steam parts, then gone again behind mist and rain. You do not need to follow it. The pool keeps its own boundaries close at hand. Stone under your fingers, water under your back. The cedar stool at your side with the folded towel, and the lantern still dark. A drop from the end of your hair runs along your temple and into the pool. Another gathers at your chin before falling. The rain is steady enough now that your face never fully dries between drops. Your shoulders, under the water, feel heavier in the pleasant way that warmth can make them feel. as if the bones have settled more deeply into themselves. The backs of your thighs loosen against the supporting water. Your feet, which felt every seam in the flagstones a few moments ago, no longer need to grip anything at all. You drift no more than an inch or two, but the body notices even that small movement. A shoulder turns. One knee rises and lowers. The surface opens around you and closes again. You could call it floating, though it is not the broad buoyancy of a deep, still log. It is something closer and more contained than that. The spring taking enough of your weight that your breathing becomes the main motion left. Inhale, and the chest lifts slightly. Exhale, and the water receives you back. Steam crosses your line of sight in passing folds. Through it, the brass lantern appears and disappears on the stool. Never bright, because it is not lit. Only distinct by shape, and by the way its wet metal catches the last of the available light. A bead of rain gathers on its handle, thickens, and drops to the cedar slat below. The towel beside it remains dry at the centerfold. You know the comfort of that in advance, and because you know it, there is no need to think about rising yet. Your hand trails just beneath the surface until your fingertips find the inner curve of the basin. The stone there is smoother than the outer lip, worn by water and use. A thin mineral slick gives under your fingers, not slippery enough to trouble you, only enough to remind you that spring water leaves traces wherever it passes. You rub your thumb once along the stone, and then leave your hand there, half submerged, feeling the warmth collect in the web between your fingers. Another small change comes over the pool as dusk lowers. The surface begins to reflect less of the sky and more of whatever is nearest. Your shoulder, the steam, the darker line of the terrace edge. The basin earns its name differently now than it did earlier. In brighter light, it would have offered a clearer image back to you. At this hour, it gives only fragments, softened and broken by rain. A cheekbone, the pale oval of a knee, the blur of your hand moving through the water. Then even those fragments disperse into ripples. You let your eyes close for a few breaths. With sight reduced, the contrast grows cleaner. Coolness stipples your brow and lashes. Heat settles around your collarbones, under your arms, down through your hips and thighs. The rain does not trouble the warmth. It only sharpens its edges. Somewhere above, runoff from the upper terrace finds a narrow path through stone and falls in a quick, repeating thread. Closer by, the pool makes a faint, lapping sound where your breathing shifts your position against the side. When you open your eyes again, the bothy is visible only in part from here. The angle of roof, dark with rain. A suggestion of the doorway under the lintel. A little amber from within, dimmed by weather and distance. It is enough. You can picture the black iron rail just inside, the towels warming there, the boards underfoot, the blue mugs on the ledge beyond in the room where the window catches whatever light remains. You do not need to go in to feel those things as part of the evening. They stay arranged in the mind as steadily as the terraces stay arranged on the hillside. Your shoulders sink another fraction lower. The water reaches the base of your throat now when you exhale fully. A line of warmth runs along the back of your neck where the pool touches and the rain does not. Your ears, close to the surface, begin to catch the rounded underwater hush beneath the rain's finer tapping. It is a layered listening. Weather above, spring below, your own breath moving between them. The cedar gives off its faint scent whenever the rain freshens. The towel waits within reach on the stool. The lantern remains unlit. These things do not need attention so much as recognition. You know where they are. You know the short distance from this basin back to the doorway, and from the doorway to the rail, and from the rail again out into weather. Because the distances are known, the mind stops measuring them. It can rest in the warmer fact of being here now, with the broader water under you and the evening lowering by slow degrees over the Glen. For a while, you do nothing more than adjust once, then become still again. Your left foot slides from the basin floor and rises into suspension. Your right hand leaves the stone edge and drifts palm up through the water. Rain gathers at your eyelashes and slips free. The steam thins, then thickens. The ripples spread from your shoulders, touch the curved sides of the pool, and return so gently that they are felt more than seen. The middle mirror gives you more room than the upper basin did. And in that extra room, your attention spreads too. Not outward into anything busy or far away. Only enough to include the shape of your whole body in the water at once. The back floating more freely. The hips easing downward. The knees half bent. The chest rising and settling. The face cool beneath the rain. Heat below. Rain above. Breath between. You remain there as the last of the clearer dusk begins to draw thinner across the surface. Your body balanced in the broad spring water. The stool and folded towel beside you. The lantern dark. The bothy behind and above. And the Glen gradually giving up its edges to rain and steam. Chapter 5. Blue mugs on the window ledge. When you come back from the broad water, the flagstones feel cooler than they did before. Not because the rain has changed, but because your skin has learned the spring's heat and notices the difference more clearly. You step up from the terrace with water running from your calves and heels, and the path to the bothy is already familiar enough that you do not need to look down at every stone. Rain beads on your forearms. Steam thins behind you over the middle mirror. Ahead, the doorway stands dark under the oak lintel, and from just inside comes the stored warmth of stone, linen, and banked peat. At the threshold, you pause without deciding to. It is simply what happens here. Your hand finds the edge of a towel on the black iron rail and draws it free. The linen has weight from its weave and heat from the rail. When you open it around your shoulders, the warmth settles first across the upper back, then over the chest and down the arms as you pull the ends in. A faded red stripe runs near one edge, darkened for a moment where your wet fingers press it. Water leaves small marks on the floor stones beneath you. The rain remains close enough to hear through the partly open door, but inside it changes shape, becoming less a touch on the face and more a pattern on slate, on the lintel, on the stone step outside. You stand for a few breaths in the threshold pause, the towel taking up the damp from your neck and shoulders. The skin beneath it prickles, then eases. Behind you, farther in, the hearthroom gives off that low, peat-warm scent that never needs to be strong to be known. A faint crackle comes and goes from the banked fire. Timber settles somewhere with a small, dry tick. The latch, left shy of catching, rests against the jamb without sound. Nothing in the room asks for attention. It is enough to remain under the lintel until the rain on your face begins to feel companionable beside the heat gathered under the cloth. Then your hands begin to matter more than the rest of you. The towel slips from your shoulders into your grip, and you use one dry corner to work the water from your fingers, pressing each hand into the fabric as though you are learning its shape again. The linen rasps very slightly over the pads of your thumbs. Damp coolness leaves the knuckles last. You rub between each finger, then around the wrists, and feel the blood come back warmer there, the way it does after you have been submerged up to the shoulders and then risen into air. The action is small, almost nothing, but it narrows your attention pleasantly. Hands, cloth, breath, rain beyond the door. The window ledge is to your left, deep set in the stone wall, and along it, the blue mugs stand in their usual row. Their glaze is crazed from years of heat and damp, a fine pale net under the blue, and in the dimming light, each one keeps a different shade. One nearer slate, one nearer sea glass, one with a darker ring at the lip, where the kiln once ran hotter. You know them by use more than by appearance. One has a handle broad enough for cold fingers. One tips a little if set on an uneven board. One keeps heat longest because the clay was thrown thicker. Tonight, you reach for the broad-handled one without needing to think. Its surface is cooler than the towel, cooler than your palm, and that contrast is pleasant too. You lift it from the ledge and hear the faint, dry sound of fired clay leaving stone. A little condensation from the window has gathered under its base. Your thumb passes through it and comes away wet. Outside the small pane, rain tracks down the glass in narrow silver threads, crossing and joining before they drop out of sight. The glen beyond has already softened. You can still make out the darker rise of the hillside and the pale steam above the terraces, but not with the same edges as before. Near the hearthroom, a kettle has been set where the banked peat can keep it near the boil without hurry. You cross the few steps to it with the towel still around your shoulders. your bare feet finding the warmer patches in the floor by habit. The kettle lid gives a slight tremor. Not a whistle, only the first suggestion of it. A thin breath of steam at the spout. Beside it is a small tin of mild herbs, the sort used here because they do not crowd the mouth. A little heather, perhaps, and leaf enough to soften the water without making it busy. You spoon a pinch into the mug. The dry leaves tap lightly against the clay. Then you tip in the hot water and watch the surface darken by slow degrees. Pale gold first, then a deeper straw. Steam rises at once and touches your face differently from the rain. Rain arrives in points, cool and exact. Steam spreads and thins and leaves a sheen on the skin above your lip. You bring the mug close, not yet drinking, and let that warmth meet your cheek. Through the cracked blue glaze, through the clay, through the handle into your fingers. Another kind of heat makes itself known, less complete than the pools, more local, something the hand can cup and keep. You carry the mug back to the window ledge and stand there with one hip against the stone. The towel has begun to cool at the edges, with the doorway air reaches it. But under the folds near your ribs, it is still warm. Your hair, if it has dried at all, has dried only at the ends. A drop works its way from behind one ear to the side of your neck, and the towel catches it. The mug warms your palm and the base of your thumb. Beyond the glass, rain taps and slides. On the roof above, the slate gives it a flatter note than skin or water do. A sound spread thin and even over the whole cabin. You find yourself listening to the differences again. Roof, glass, flagstone, the little run from the eaves outside the door. Each surface answers in its own way. When you drink the tea, it is mild enough that the spring remains at the center of it. The herbs only round the edges. Heat reaches the tongue first, then the roof of the mouth, then the throat. And you feel the path of it lower into the chest with a steadiness that asks for no notice beyond itself. Another sip, smaller this time. The mug leaves a damp crescent on the ledge where it stood before. Your fingers shift around the handle to follow the warmer part of the clay. The bothy feels most lived in at moments like this. Not because there is much in it, but because the few things in it have all been used in the same way, over and over, until they have taken on the shape of the evening, the rail just inside the door, the stack of Mary's folded towels, each square and dry, red stripe aligned near the edge, the mugs along the sill, the stone floor worn smoother near the threshold than in the corners. None of it needs arranging beyond the little adjustments your hands make as they go. You glance toward the towel stack and see one corner slightly out from the rest, where a cloth was drawn earlier. It is enough to step over and press the pile true again with your fingertips. The upper towel gives under your hand, thick and springy, then settles back into its square. For a while, you do nothing more than stand there and drink by intervals. The rain keeps to its work. The peat gives off one small crackle, then another. Somewhere in the wall or roof, water finds a course it has found many times before. The mug grows lighter by degrees. The towel around your shoulders grows less hot, more companionable, no longer changing your temperature so much as evening it out. Your hands, dried and then warmed, feel newly useful, capable of touching cold stone again without flinching. You look through the pane and can just make out the pale breath over the terraces. The middle mirror is hidden from this angle, but you know where it lies below, broad under the rain. Farther up, beyond sight, St. Bride's spout will still be feeding the upper eye in its narrow, bright line, carrying that faint iron scent into the damp air. You do not need to see any of it for the places to remain clear. They stay arranged in you by distance and temperature. The hot upper basin beneath the carved channel, the broad middle water, the lower pool where dusk catches longest on the schist edge. The old saying moves through your mind in the same unforced way the tea moves through your chest. Rain to the face, spring water to the bones. The mug is nearly empty now. A final mouthful has cooled enough to drink all at once. You swallow it and remain with the mug near your lips for a moment, taking in the last of its warmth. Then you lower it and set it back among the others. Again, that ceramic click, softened by the room and the weather outside. The row is not exact any longer. Your mug sits a little forward of the rest. You leave it there for a breath, then nudge it back into line with one finger. An unimportant correction that somehow satisfies the hand. Your towel has taken what damp it can from your shoulders. If you slide a hand beneath it now, your skin feels warm, almost dry across the collarbones, still cooler at the forearms, cooler again at the calves, where the room air reaches. You draw the cloth once over your hands again, especially the fingertips, and then fold it loosely over the rail so that the heated iron can begin its work on the parts you have used. The linen falls with a heavier sound than you expect, a soft weight meeting metal. At the doorway, you stop once more. The step below is dark with rain. Beyond it, the path shines in broken patches where the last of the evening still finds the wet stone. The air outside feels colder now against your face than it did when you first came in, though not by much. It is enough to notice, enough to make the return to water more appealing in the plain, bodily way that matters here. You rest your fingers for a moment on the door edge, feeling the grain of damp wood under the thumb. Behind you, the mugs remain on the ledge, blue shapes against the stone. The hearthroom keeps its low heat. The towels stay stacked and square. Before you, rain threads down through the dimness toward the terraces, and the steam beyond the threshold rises and thins and gathers again. You take one breath in the doorway, then another, with the taste of mild herbs still faint in your mouth, and let your feet turn back toward the baths. Chapter 6. Mist from Meall Liath. You ease the door wider with the back of your fingers and step out from the peat-warm dimness of the bothy into rain again. The change meets you at once. Cool beads on your forehead, on the bridge of your nose, on the tops of your feet, where the flagstones have already given up what little warmth they had. Behind you, the doorway keeps its stored heat in the stone jambs and the oak lintel overhead. Ahead, the terraces slope down through steam and wet, darkening rock. And beyond them, the Glen begins to show itself a little more than before, not by growing clearer, but by pressing closer through rain and mist. You pause just outside, not for the threshold pause this time, but because your eyes need a moment with the dimness. The rain has thickened the air into layers. Near at hand, you can see the pale drift of steam lifting from the broad water. A little farther off, the heather is only a low roughness against the hillside, deep purple gone nearly brown in the failing light. Beyond that, the hollow of Corey Freach opens and closes by turns as the weather shifts across it. You do not see all of it at once. You see a shoulder of land, then lose it. A thread of runoff bright against stone, then gone again. The line of the path. The darker mass of the slope above. From the shoulder of Meall Liath, mist is beginning to come down. At first, it is only a whitening of the air high up, something you notice between one breath and the next. Then it gathers shape, though not an edge. It slides low over the hill's wet flank and loosens into the Glen in long, torn folds, moving so steadily that you only register it by what disappears behind it. The upper terrace, which had been plain enough a moment ago, grows faint around the spout. The carved channel and its pale mineral rim blur, then return, then blur again. It is not a fast change. It is a gradual reduction, a hand passing over a lamp without ever fully covering it. You walk down the flagstones toward the middle mirror, your soles reading the path before your eyes do. The stones are slick but familiar. The broad basin gives off more warmth than the air can carry away. And when you reach it, that warmth rises around your knees and hands before you touch the water. The cedar stool stands where you left it, darkened by damp, the grain lifting a little under the rain. The folded towel on top has kept its dryness under the overhang of the cloth you draped there earlier, and the brass lantern beside it wears a skin of droplets, each one catching what remains of the sky, and then letting it go. You set your fingertips on the towel, just to feel that it is still warm within the fold. It is. Then you leave it there and turn to the pool. The middle mirror has changed since the last time you entered it. Earlier, it held more of the sky. Now, the sky is less a surface above than a dim source of light somewhere in the rain. And the water answers in darker tones. Ripples from the falling drops spread and cross and flatten. Steam gathers low, blown toward you and then away. The far edge of the basin comes and goes under that shifting white breath, and beyond it, the Glen opens in fragments. You lower yourself in by degrees, one foot, then the other, feeling the body relearn the same contrast it has already learned tonight. Rain cool on the face, spring heat around the ankles, the shins, the knees. The stone step under your foot is smooth, where many feet have found it over the years. And the water climbs your calves with a pressure that is both light and complete. When you sink further, the heat takes the backs of your thighs, the hips, the small of your back. Your hands trail beside you, making two brief, darker paths through the steam. Then your shoulders settle beneath the surface, and the breath leaves you in a longer stream than before. The rain belongs to the face, and spring water to the bones. You do not think it as a saying to be remembered. It arrives more like the shape of the sensation itself, cool across the brow, heat through the neck and down between the shoulder blades, the front of your face beaded with rain, while the chest, the ribs, the weight of the arms all ease into the mineral dark water. You let your head tip back just enough that the rain can strike your forehead directly. A drop runs into one eyebrow and hangs there before slipping down. From here, the glen is wider, though not sharper. The terraces have always been cut into the hillside, but with the mist coming down, they feel less like separate levels and more like one long, warm seam set into the land. The upper pool is a pale blur now, its steam mingling with the weather until you cannot tell where one ends and the other begins. Somewhere above, St. Bride's Spout keeps its narrow pouring sound, finer than the rain, a steadier thread within the larger hush. Lower down, beyond the last terrace wall, the glen floor lies hidden in patches. You hear more than you see. The distant burn moves through quarry frog with that rounded, continuous sound of water over stones. Never loud, never still. Every so often, the rain shifts just enough for the burn to come forward in your hearing, then fold back again behind the nearer patter on the pool. Wet heather carries a dark green scent under the iron trace from the spring. The air tastes faintly of stone. A bell sounds once, far off and small. It may be a sheep moving somewhere beyond the next rise. The bell muted by rain and distance, until it is hardly more than a note of metal in the damp air. You listen for it again, and do not hear it. The glen does not empty because the sound has gone. It simply settles back into water. Rain on the surface, runoff threading between stones, the spout above, the far burn below. You shift your shoulders deeper and feel the basin answer with a wider ring of ripples. The water here does not grip as fiercely as the upper eye. It supports. It spreads its heat more evenly along the back and under the arms. If you slide your feet a little forward, the body begins to float without effort. Not fully adrift, just enough that the weight leaves the lower spine and the neck lengthens. The rain stipples your cheeks. Steam drifts across your mouth and cools before the next breath. The mist from Meall Liath comes lower. You can see its progress now by the way the upper stones vanish. First, the wall beside the path loses its sharp line. Then, the lip of the upper eye fades until only the pale stain of minerals near the spout remains visible. The steam from that hottest basin rises into the descending mist and is taken into it, the two whites joining. For a little while, the top terrace seems farther away than it is, although you know the distance exactly. A dozen wet steps, a turn of the path, the carved spout. Familiar and close, even when hidden. That is one of the comforts of the place. You do not need to see every edge to know where it is. You rest one hand on the stone rim of the middle mirror. The edge is rain-cooled above the waterline and warm beneath it, and your palm spans both temperatures at once. Droplets gather at your wrist and run down the forearm until they meet the pool. The stone has a faint grain to it, smoothed by weather and use. Under your thumb, a shallow notch catches a little stream of overflow and sends it away in a thin trickle. Behind you, if you were to turn, the bothy would still be there, with its low roof taking the rain. You do not need to look to picture the doorway left ajar. The black iron rail just inside, the towels stacked square, the blue mugs on the ledge beyond. Those indoor shapes remain in the mind as plainly as the water around your shoulders. They make a small measure against which the outside feels wider, though not exposed. Stone near at hand, hill beyond, rain over both. The mist reaches the line of the upper terrace and spills across it. For a minute or two, the upper eye is almost entirely veiled. Only the sound of the spout marks it out. The whiteness moves across the path and over the terrace wall in a low band, not dense enough to block the lantern on the stool if it were lit, but enough to soften every outline it touches. Even the nearest heather loses its prickly shape and becomes a dark wash along the edge of the stones. You breathe in through the nose and catch the changing air. Rain has one smell on the flagstones near the doorway, another over the open pools, and another again when mist comes down from the hill. This has more of peat and wet grass in it, and less of slate. The spring keeps its iron note beneath everything else, a faint rust-colored tang at the back of the throat. The steam from the basin carries mineral warmth up under your chin. Your skin can tell where the weather ends and the water begins, long before thought puts words to it. Another small happening passes through the evening, almost without weight. A runnel of rainwater, fed from higher up the slope, finds a fuller path between two stones beside the terrace and begins to pour in a steadier line. You hear it first as an extra note among the others, then see it silvering down the edge of the path before spilling over into the overflow channel below. It changes nothing. It simply joins the pattern already there. You let your eyes soften and follow the mist downward. Where it touches the broad water, it thins. Steam pushes up from the pool, and the rain presses down from above. And between them, the mist loosens into pale streamers that move across the surface and break apart. For a few breaths, the Glen seems made of these crossings. Warm rising, cool falling, dark stone between. Your own body sits exactly in the middle of them. Cheeks cool, ears damp, neck and shoulders steeped in heat. The upper arms buoyed, the knees less distinct now under the water than they were when you first lowered yourself in. The distant burn carries on. Sometimes you hear the brighter chatter of water over shallower stones. Sometimes only the lower rush beneath. A faint wind touches the heather higher up, enough to shift the mist's direction by a degree or two. It does not reach you strongly here in the terrace hollow. What reaches you is only the result. Rain changing angle on your face for a moment. Steam drawn sideways. The sound of the spout sharpened and then blurred again. You think, without any need to settle on it, that the Glen feels smaller in this weather and larger at the same time. Smaller because the far edges are gone. Larger because what remains has depth to it. Near rain, middle steam, hidden hillside, the unseen course of the burn. You are not looking at a view. You are inside layers of air and water and stone, each one touching the next. When the mist begins to pass beyond the upper terrace, the shape of the spout returns first, then the pale rim below it, then the dark cut of the basin wall. Nothing comes back brighter than before. It only reappears by degrees, as if drawn in charcoal, and then lightly smudged. The path between the pools shows itself again, glossy with rain. The edge of the cedar stool sharpens. A bead of water drops from the lantern's handle to the wood with a tiny click. You remain where you are. The warmth has worked farther inward now, reaching places that at first kept a little reserve against it. The muscles at the base of your neck have loosened. Your jaw hangs easier. The hands no longer need to grip the rim. The one still rests there because the stone feels good under the palm. The rain on your face has become less a contrast than a companion to the heat below, each making the other clearer. Above, Meall Liath is no longer visible as a whole slope, only as a source from which weather keeps arriving. Below, the burn keeps to its course through Rowanbrae, heard and not seen. Around you, the terraces breathe steam into the cooling air. And in the broad water of the middle pool, with mist passing over and thinning again, you stay anchored by the simplest things. The pressure of water under the knees, the slick edge of stone, the faint iron in the air, the rain gathering at your temples and slipping down into the heat. Chapter 7. The lower lantern at dimming time. After a time in the broad water, you come upright by degrees, not all at once. The middle mirror loosens you slowly. Your feet find the sloped floor of the basin. Your palms press once to the stone edge. Rain, which had become only a cool pattern across your brow and cheeks, sharpens again as more of you rises into the air. Water streams from your shoulders and ribs and down the backs of your thighs before it returns to the terrace in narrow threads. The mist has thickened while you are still. It moves across the upper path in torn bands, enough to hide and reveal the next few steps by turns. Behind you, the bothy shows only a muted amber at the doorway, not bright through the rain, only enough to tell stone from air. The cedar stool remains where you left it, darkened by damp, with the folded towel still dry under its draped corner, and the brass lantern beside it, beaded with droplets. You reach first for the lantern. The brass is colder than the towel. Your fingers close around its handle and feel the small weight of it, the faint roughness where the metal has dulled with use. When you lift it, droplets gather along the frame and slide to your knuckles. You shelter it for a moment with your body and thumb the latch. The little door gives with a familiar catch, then opens. Inside, the wick is short and the oil low enough for what the evening needs. Not brightness, only a mark beside the lower pool, a point for the eye to settle on when the Glen begins to lose its edges. You strike the flame and touch it to the wick. For a breath, it burns taller than it will keep, clear and yellow in the damp air. Then you lower it. The flame shortens. Glass mists faintly from the change in temperature, then clears again in an oval near the top. It is enough. In the brass, in the rain, in the thickening dusk, enough is a very small thing. You close the little door and hear the click as it seats. The towel stays where it is. You do not need it yet. Warmth from the middle basin still lies close over your skin, and the rain between one pool and the next is part of the passage down. You take the lantern in one hand and begin the descent. The path from the middle terrace to the lower one is already known by your feet. The flagstones are slick, their edges dark with wet, and a ribbon of runoff crosses the second step before slipping away into the heather. You place each foot with the same unhurried care as before, not from caution exactly, but from the pleasure of feeling where each stone begins and ends. The lantern swings almost not at all. Its light touches the nearest ground, a wash of amber over blackened stone, then lifts to the low wall where rain has silvered the top. Below, the lower lantern lies darker than the middle pool, though it has not yet become black. Dusk has gathered in it first. The broadest band of remaining light in the Glen rests along the flat schist edging on the far side, where the stone catches and keeps a last cool gleam. It is not much more than a stripe now, a pale leaden sheen under rain. But against the dark water, it is enough to draw the eye. You pause on the final step and look. The upper terrace is almost gone behind the mist. St. Bride's spout can still be heard if you listen for it. A thin, continuous pouring somewhere above and to the side. But the carved mouth itself is no longer visible from here. The shoulder of Meall Liath has folded completely into weather. Across Corre Frog, the heather has lost its color and become only texture, a low roughness where the hillside falls away. The burn continues below all of it, unseen, making its own narrow course through stone. At the lower edge, rain works a different pattern on the water than it did in the middle basin. Here, the surface is darker, and the dimples show silver only for an instant before they disappear. Steam rises less broadly too, drawing lower over the basin, drifting close to the surface before the air takes it. You can see where warmer currents move beneath, because the rain marks break and reform in slow, shifting patches. You carry the lantern to its place beside the pool. There is a flatter piece of schist near the near corner, just wide enough for the lantern's base to stand level. You set it there and turn it slightly away, so the glass does not face directly across the water. The light reaches only the nearest stone and a small section of the pool's edge. It does not spread far. It does not trouble the dark. Instead, it marks the corner of the terrace, the place where your hand will return when you rise, the place where brass, rain, and stone meet. When you straighten, the flame remains low and steady behind the glass. Rain taps the lantern roof in tiny, irregular strokes. A droplet gathers under the lid, hangs for a moment, and falls to the schist below. You bring your bare feet to the edge. The stone here is flatter than at the upper pool, less rounded than the middle basin's lip. Schist gives a different sensation underfoot, a faint grain across the sole, a layered firmness, a stored warmth where the spring has touched it through the day. The last of the dusk lies along that edge, and under your feet together, cool in the eye and warm to the skin. You lower one hand to the water first. The lower pool is not as hot as the upper eye, not as open as the middle mirror. Its warmth comes differently, deeper and steadier, less urgent at the surface. Your fingers enter the dark and vanish to the knuckles. Rain lands around them in bright little rings. The heat reaches your skin a moment later, then settles. You trail your hand once through the top few inches and feel the soft drag of mineral water against your palm. Then you lower yourself down. One foot finds the first shelf, then the next. Water folds around your ankles, your calves, your knees. The rain on your shoulders sharpens as your legs disappear into heat. You take hold of the edge with one hand, not gripping, only measuring the descent. The basin receives your hips, then the small of your back. A breath leaves you as the water reaches your waist, another as it rises to your ribs. By the time your shoulders sink under, the contrast has become exact again. Cool rain on your face, hot water around the bones. The saying comes, as it has before, not as something to remember on purpose, only as the shape the body gives to the moment. Rain to the face, spring water to the bones. Here at the lower terrace, with the light falling away from the Glen, the words seem to shorten further. Face and bones, cool and heat, air and water. The rest can go dim. You settle back until the pool takes your weight. The schist edge supports one forearm. Your neck loosens. Your chest rises a little higher with each easier breath, then sinks again. Rain beads on your forehead and gathers at the bridge of your nose before slipping down into the warmer air just above the water. The tip of one ear stays cool where it is not fully submerged. The other drifts under and hears the world differently. A muted thrum of water, rain, and your own movement. The lantern remains at the corner of your sight. Its low flame does not throw much across the pool. Only a small amber tremor on the nearest ripples. Sometimes the water catches it and stretches it thin. Sometimes rain breaks it apart at once. More often it rests as a dull glow in the glass, enough to show the line of the edge and the dark shape of the handle above. You do not look at it continuously. It is simply there when your eyes open. The band of dusk on the far schist narrows. At first, it had looked almost metallic, a cool strip laid along the stone. Now it softens into a grayer line, then into patches where the rain catches more strongly. You notice this not as an event, but as a gradual change in what your eyes can still separate. The far edge remains visible. The heather beyond it does not. The slope beyond the heather has already gone. Between one breath and the next, the water and the hillside exchange places in your attention. And then the hillside falls away entirely. You float neither fully prone nor fully upright, but in that middle posture baths teach the body without instruction. The backs of your thighs are buoyed. Your knees unfasten. Your abdomen softens under the heat. Across the shoulders, where rain and steam keep meeting, the skin cannot decide between coolness and warmth, and so settles into both. From time to time, you shift one heel against the floor of the basin and feel the fine smoothness there, worn by years of spring flow and use. A little runoff reaches the lower terrace from above and taps the outer stone lip before finding a seam and slipping away. The sound is small but distinct once you hear it. Not the direct rain, not the distant burn, not the spout above, but this nearer trickle crossing one chosen route through the terrace. It keeps on. So does the rain on the lantern roof. So does the low hiss where droplets strike the hottest parts of the pool and vanish into steam. You close your eyes for a few breaths, and the dark changes quality at once. With your lids shut, the lantern is only warmth in color behind the skin. No shape left to it. Rain touches your brow, your cheeks, your upper lip. Water presses under your shoulder blades and behind your knees. Your hands, resting open along the edge and just below the surface, feel two temperatures at once. Cool air over the knuckles, heat around the wrists. You find yourself counting breaths for a little while, then losing the count and not beginning again. When you open your eyes, the lower terrace has drawn in closer. The lantern marks the corner. The nearest schist edge remains clear. Beyond that, the glen has thinned to hints. A pale thread of mist crosses where the upper path should be, and dissolves into rain. The bothy's doorway shows only intermittently now through weather and angle, a muted square under the oak lintel, then not even that. Then a trace of amber again when the mist loosens. You know the path back by feel more than sight at this hour. The knowing itself steadies the body. There is no need to test it yet. You lift one hand from the water and lay it on the flat stone beside you. The schist is slick with rain near the outer edge, and warmer nearer the basin, where the heat has reached through. Your palm spans both. Droplets gather against the heel of your hand and slip under it. The stone's layers show under the skin as the faintest ridges, then smooth away toward the waterline. You leave your hand there long enough to feel the warmth stored in it, not from sun now, but from the pool and the earth beneath. The flame in the lantern lowers a fraction more. Not enough to go out, only enough that the glass grows darker at the top and brighter near the wick. The brass cap ticks once as a bead of rain cools it. Then all the sounds resume their same places. Rain overhead, rain on the pool, runoff at the lip, the hidden burn below, the thin pour of the spout above, and your own breath entering cool and leaving warmer through the damp air. The lower pool deepens as light thins. What had been dark green-gray becomes almost ink at the center, though your body still feels the shape of it exactly. The edge under your forearm, the floor under one foot when you stretch it down, the line where water meets your collarbone, the broad support under the hips and lower back. In dimming time, sight gives up one thing after another, and touch takes over without hurry. You remain there as the last visible sheen along the far schist fades to nearly nothing. The lantern keeps its small place by the corner. Rain continues over your face. Heat continues around your shoulders and down through your spine. Steam moves low across the basin and is lost into the darkening air before you can follow it far. And in the lower terrace, with the Glen reducing itself to stone, water, and weather, you stay where the warmth is deepest, letting the evening narrow around the pool until the next movement, whenever it comes, can be as slow as this one. Chapter 8. The Warm Stone Shelf. After a time, you shift only enough to feel the shape of the lower pool more clearly around you. The lantern stays low by the corner, its amber no brighter than a cupped hand. The schist edge that held the last of dusk has gone dark now, and the water has taken on that deeper mineral color it keeps when the sky can no longer be read from its surface. Rain stipples the pool in scattered rings. Steam passes over them in thin bands, and then thickens again, so that what lies a little way off is less seen than sensed. Behind you, just above the waterline, the stone shelf keeps its warmth. You find it with your palm first, reaching back without haste until your hand meets the smooth face of it. The contact is immediate and plain, not slippery, though wet, not rough, though it is stone. Years of water and hands have worn it to a surface almost satin in its own mineral way. And the heat stored there is different from the heat of the pool. The pool moves around you, rises and loosens, presses and releases with every breath and every tiny shift of rain. The shelf does not move at all. It gives back a steadier warmth, gathered into the stone itself. Your fingers spread over it. Droplets have formed there in a fine row, beaded along the slight lip. One gathers against the heel of your hand, cool at first where it touches the skin, then warmed almost at once. It swells, grows heavy enough, and slips away. You do not hear it return to the basin. You only feel the smallest change where it was. You rest there for a few breaths, hand on stone, shoulders under water, face open to rain. The contrast has become familiar enough now that you no longer meet it as surprise. It arrives the same way each time, and still has its own freshness. Rain on the brow and cheeks, the bridge of the nose cool, the lips damp with weather. Spring water gathered around the neck, under the shoulder blades, at the small of the back, under the knees where the heat pools most deeply. The old saying comes back in the shape of a murmur rather than words first, and then the words follow after it, as if remembered from another room. Rain belongs to the face, and spring water to the bones. You do not need to think about whether it is true. Here, with your palm on the shelf and your body lowered into the lower lantern, it feels less like belief than naming. Another thread of water gathers on the stone behind you. This one begins farther up, where the rain and steam meet the warmer face of the shelf and leave their bright residue. It swells from a pinprick to a rounded bead, catches for a moment in the shallowest hollow, then joins the next and makes a narrower runnel. Your thumb feels it pass. The line of it reaches the edge and disappears back into the basin, water to water again. You lean a little more of your weight into the shelf, enough to feel the support travel through your arm and shoulder. The muscles there let go by degrees. Your neck settles. Your chest rises in the cool, damp air above the surface and lowers into heat again. The rain has changed its sound since dusk. Earlier, it moved over the terraces with more separate notes. On flagstone, on the low wall, on the lantern top, on the broad water above. Now the dark has reduced those distances. The rain reaches you mostly as touch and as a close, even patter on the pool itself. Somewhere higher up, if you listen between one breath and the next, there is still the faintest run of water from the upper terrace, but it comes thinned by mist and stone. Your hand stays where it is. The shelf becomes a point to rest your attention on, not because it asks for it, but because it is so easy to keep finding. Warm, smooth, wet, firm under the palm. When your fingers lift, they meet the rounded beads. When they settle, the beads break and spread into a cooler film before the heat gathers through again. The same few sensations repeat, with slight changes. And because they repeat, you stop trying to follow them all. A breath in through cool rain. A breath out into warmer steam. Palm to stone. Shoulders in water. You could almost measure the evening by these returns. The lantern gives a small shift beside the pool. Not in brightness, but in the sound of its metal cooling under rain. A tiny tick from the brass. Then nothing more from it. The wick remains low, enough only to mark the edge of the terrace and the place where the folded dark begins. You are not looking toward it much. The chapter of the evening that belonged more to sight has already thinned. What remains comes by skin first. The back of your wrist drags lightly over the shelf. Mineral smoothness gives way to a faint seam in the stone, then smoothness again. Near the lip, where the droplets collect, the heat is slightly less. Lower down, closer to the basin's own stored warmth, the stone feels fuller, denser with it. You notice these differences because there is time to notice them. Nothing interrupts long enough to pull you away. Rain touches your eyelids. You close them for a while and let the dark stay dark. With your eyes closed, the pool seems broader for a few moments, then smaller, then exactly the size it is, enough to cradle your hips and back, enough to buoy your arms if you let them float free, enough for the heat to gather around the ribs and the thighs and the base of the spine. The lower basin has always had this particular way of receiving you. The upper eye asks for a more upright stillness beneath the spout. The middle mirror opens into drifting. Here, in the lowest terrace, you settle lower in yourself. The stone behind you makes that possible. So does the dark. Your other hand rises from the water and joins the first on the shelf. For a moment, both palms rest there, shoulder width apart, fingers curved over the edge. The position changes the chest, opens it a little, lets the sternum lift into the rain, while the shoulder blades flatten and widen under heat. The movement is small, but the body answers it. Breath goes deeper without effort. A thin line of cooler air touches the upper chest. Below it, the water keeps the ribs warm and loose. Droplets collect between your fingers now. One hangs from the knuckle of your smallest finger, trembling with the minute movement of your pulse, then lets go. Another runs down over the side of your hand and slips back into the basin along your wrist. The path it takes is so brief, you would miss it if you were not already still. The saying returns again, softer this time, almost without language. Rain to the face, spring water to the bones. Not instruction, not explanation. More like the way a hand remembers a latch in the dark and finds it without looking. You open your eyes. The steam has thickened while they were closed. It lies low over the pool, and above it, the rain enters in brighter threads where the lantern catches them, then vanishes. Beyond the terrace wall, there is little to separate hillside from mist. Frog has narrowed to what can be reached from where you are. The wet edge under your forearm, the basin around your waist and legs, the lantern's low mark, a strip of darker stone, the moving air against your face. Somewhere out in the glen, the burn continues. But from here, it is only a softer undertone beneath the nearer weather. You shift your left palm and feel the shelf's rounded edge under the pads of your fingers. The stone has been shaped by use as much as by water. You can tell where hands have often rested, where elbows have found their place, where the mineral skin has been worn to a more even sheen. It is not a polished thing in any decorative sense. It is simply well met, again and again, by warmth, water, and human weight. That repeated contact has made its own finish. Your shoulders sink another fraction. Heat closes over the upper arms. The rain reaches less of you now, touching mostly forehead, temples, the tip of the chin when you tilt it up. The rest remains submerged. This, too, has its balance. Too high, and the rain cools more than you want. Too low, and you miss the clear freshness on the face that makes the spring feel deeper by contrast. You find the level without deciding on it. The body knows by now where to settle. A small run of overflow moves past your hip and away over the lip of the pool. You feel it as a gentler current against the skin. A brief directional change within the broader warmth. The basin receives rain, gives off steam, and lets excess slip onward down the terrace. Even here, at rest, the water is never fixed. It gathers, releases, gathers again. Your hand on the shelf meets the same pattern in miniature. Beads forming, joining, sliding back. The repetition narrows thought in a useful way. You notice the exact breadth of the shelf beneath your palms. You notice how the stone under the right hand is a little warmer than under the left, perhaps from the angle of your leaning. You notice the rain cooling the top rim of your ear. You notice the weight of water against the backs of the knees. These are enough to occupy the mind without filling it. For a while, you trace the edge of the shelf with one finger. The movement is nearly nothing. Along the lip, the mineral has built itself in a very slight ridge, smoothed but still there. Your fingertip follows it, pauses where a droplet has gathered, then moves on. When the finger dips lower, the stone becomes warmer. When it rises toward the edge, cooler again. It is a small map made only of temperature and touch. The lantern gives one more faint metallic tick. Rain keeps falling. The pool keeps its heat. You think, not for the first time this evening, of the doorway up at the bothy, with its rail of warmed linen just inside, and of Mary's folded towels stacked square and dry by nightfall. The thought does not pull you out of the water. It only adds another layer of known comfort somewhere behind the dark. Another part of the circuit already made familiar. The threshold pause will still be there later, if later comes. For now, the shelf behind your back is enough of a resting place. Your hands lower again, one returning to the water, the other staying on the stone. The free hand drifts through the basin and comes to rest against your thigh. Heat has softened the skin there until even the lightest movement of water feels broad and slow. Your breathing has taken on the rhythm the pool has been offering all along. Cool at the face, warm through the chest and belly, warmer still where the water deepens around the hips. Above, the rain remains steady. On the shelf, droplets continue to gather. One forms near your wrist, fed by the damp air and the warmth of stone. It rounds itself carefully, almost perfectly, then lengthens as more water joins it. For a moment, it holds to the lip by a narrow, bright thread. Then it slips free and is gone. Another begins where the first had been. Nothing about the motion needs watching to continue. Nothing hurries it. You let your head rest back a little farther. Not enough to lose the rain, only enough for the nape of your neck to meet the warmer stone beneath the waterline. The contact is immediate relief, a flatter support than water can give. The jaw loosens, the tongue rests, your mouth opens slightly to breathe, and the air tastes of rain, mineral, and the faint iron memory carried down from the higher spring. Rain to the face, spring water to the bones. The words move through you once more, and then thin out, leaving only the conditions that made them necessary in the first place. Cool drops touching the brow, warm water around the shoulders, stone under the hand, another bead forming and sliding back into the basin without sound. You stay with that simple exchange, the patient return of water to water, until even the noticing of it grows slower and less separate from the rest. Chapter 9. Linen, Cedar, and Steam. At first, you do not notice the moment of rising. The lower lantern has warmed you so thoroughly that movement begins as a thought in a hand resting on the stone shelf. A little shift of weight, a change in the angle of the wrist, a deeper breath that gathers under the ribs and then lets you come upward by degrees. Water loosens from your shoulders in warm sheets. Rain reaches the skin beneath it at once, cooler than you remembered a moment ago, though not sharp now, only clear and definite on brow and cheek. You keep one palm on the shelf as your feet find the floor of the basin. The stone underfoot is smooth, where years of use have worn it, faintly ridged where mineral has gathered back in pale seams. The lantern stays low in its corner, not bright enough to alter the dark much, only enough to mark the edge and catch a brief amber line in the rain. When you step over the lip, the schist takes your weight with a slick firmness, and runoff crosses the edge in a thin, moving thread. The air feels cooler than it did when you first came down. Not cold exactly, more that the warmth rising from the pool now meets a broader dampness around you, and steam thickens where the two pass through each other. It brushes your chest and throat as you stand, and for a few breaths, Your skin cannot decide what it is meeting first. The rain on the face, the heat still lifting from your shoulders, or the night air gathering around your arms. You reach for the towel you left within easy distance before coming down. And the linen has changed while you were in the water. It is still dry where it was folded in on itself, but the outer layer has taken a little damp from the air, enough to make the cloth feel heavier in the hand. The faded red stripe shows dark at the edge. When you open it, the inner warmth meets your neck and upper back all at once, denser than the air, and the familiar roughness of the weave catches lightly against wet skin. You draw it around your shoulders and stand that way for a moment, rain still touching your face beyond the linen's edge. The path up from the lower terrace is known now in the feet. You do not have to look for each stone. The first step takes care, because runoff has crossed it again and left a bright slickness there. After that, the climb becomes a sequence already learned by the body. One flat flag, one narrower turn by the low wall, then the rise toward the middle terrace, where the steam hangs lower over the broader basin. The lantern glow falls away behind you. Ahead, the bothy shows as a dimmer amber shape under the slate roof. The doorway left slightly open so the weather can still be heard from inside. As you come level with the middle mirror, the cedar stool appears first as a darker block beside the water, then as itself when you draw near enough to smell it. Cedar always has that faint resin note once damp air reaches it. But tonight, it seems fuller, as if the grain has opened under the rain and steam. Not strong, not at all. Just enough that when you stop beside it with the towel around your shoulders, you notice wood as distinctly as stone or linen. The folded towel left there earlier is still where you placed it, its corners square, one edge touched by a scatter of droplets that have not soaked through. You lay your hand on it and feel stored warmth inside the thickness of the linen. The stool's slats are wet on top, where the air has settled and dried again, and settled once more. The brass lantern sits beside the towel, unlit here, beaded over with fine droplets that make the metal feel cooler than it looks. You set the towel from your shoulders down for a moment and lift the dry one from the stool. It has Mary's way of being folded, exact, almost weighty in its neatness. Each side brought in cleanly, the faded stripe aligned at the edge. Your fingers work into the fold and open it. The linen gives with that dense, trustworthy drag thick cloth has when it has been warmed and pressed flat. You shake it once, not enough to make any sound beyond a small flap in the damp air, and drape it over the stool, so one half hangs ready, and the other stays above the wet slats. A practical gesture, already familiar. Something for later, prepared before it is needed. Then you gather the first towel around you again, and stand by the middle mirror without getting in yet. Rain marks the broad surface differently from the lower pool. Here the water has room to show each touch. Dimples spread and vanish. Steam lifts in sheets that thin, then gather, then thin again. In the darkening glen, the basin gives back almost no reflection now. only a bruised gleam where the sky is still a little less black than the hillside. You find yourself noticing how much easier these pauses have become. Earlier in the evening, each return from water to air, from air to doorway, from doorway to stone, carried a small alertness in it. The body checked each change. Now the changes are known. Linen after immersion, cedar under the hand. The few breaths before moving on, you turn from the stool and go toward the bothy. Not because you need more warmth than the towel already gives, but because the threshold has become part of the circuit, and the circuit itself has begun to feel like one long motion, with rests built into it. Wet flagstones take your feet up the last short stretch. Water slips from the towel hem and darkens the stone wherever it falls. Under the eaves, drops gather and release in a steadier line. The oak lintel overhead is nearly black with damp. Inside the doorway, the warmth changes shape around you. Not hotter than outside by much, but denser, stiller, carrying peat and heated linen, and the faint, dry smell of old wood under the damp. You pause there, as you have before, just within the threshold, and the custom needs no naming now. The towel comes higher around your shoulders. You tuck one edge across your chest and let the other fall over your upper arms. Your feet remain on the flagstones near the door, where the chill has not entirely left them, while your back and neck begin to absorb the stored heat from the cloth. The door stays ajar. Rain on the slate roof sounds rounder here, more gathered, while rain outside on skin had been individual, drop after drop. You hear the difference at once, then stop needing to compare it. Beyond the doorway, the terraces continue in their dim sequence. Behind you, farther in, the hearth room gives a muted peat crackle and one small tick from settling timber. The latch rests shy of catching, just as before. Nothing asks to be changed. You lower the towel and dry your hands more carefully than before, because now they have begun to feel the evening's repeated wetting and warming in the skin itself. The linen drags across the fingers, over the knuckles, into the webbing between thumb and forefinger. You press the cloth into each palm and feel heat answer there. The backs of your hands cool quickly once uncovered. The palms keep warmth longer. It is a small distinction, but one your body notices without effort. Another towel hangs on the black iron rail, warming where the heat gathers near the stone wall. You touch it only briefly, enough to feel that it is there, thick and dry. Another of Mary's folded squares with the red stripe gone deeper in the low light. The rail itself gives off a mild, stored warmth through the iron. You leave the towel where it is. It is enough to know it will be there when you come back again. For a few breaths more, you stay under the lintel. Water threads from your hairline down the side of your face. The towel drinks what reaches your neck. Your shoulders lower a little further. The body has stopped bracing against transitions now. Hot to cool, cool to warm, cloth to rain, stone to water. Each change arrives and is met. When you step out again, the rain feels finer than before. Though perhaps it is only that your skin receives it more evenly now. The path to the middle mirror is a short one. Steam reaches you before the basin does, carrying mineral warmth into the damp air. The cedar stool waits where you left it, and the towel draped across it has kept its shape. One side hanging, one side folded back from the wet. You set the towel from your shoulders onto the stool's drier corner and smooth it once with your hand. The cedar gives a faint resin scent again, warmed now by the heat rising from the pool. For a moment, your palm stays on the wood. The slats are damp, but not sodden, cool on the surface, warmer just beneath where the air from the basin has touched them all evening. The brass lantern beside it clicks very softly as a droplet slides from its handle to the wood. Then you turn to the water. The middle mirror receives you differently from the lower pool. There is no narrow settling here, no hand seeking the shelf behind you. Instead, there is breadth. You stand at the edge and let one foot descend, then the other, feeling the larger basin gather around your ankles, your calves, your knees. The temperature is less intense than the upper eye, less enclosed than the lower lantern. But after the rain and the threshold and the cedar pause, it reaches through you with a steadier spread. Your thighs enter, your hips, the small of your back. When the water comes to your waist, the towel warmth is replaced by mineral heat so gradually that there is no single point of exchange. You lower further until the basin takes the weight of you. The broad water lifts under your ribs, under the back of your shoulders, and you lean into it. Rain touches your forehead and the bridge of your nose. The old saying returns, not as words you need to think deliberately, only as the shape of the contrast itself. Rain to the face, spring water to the bones. The body knows the rest. Behind you, within reach, the cedar stool keeps the dry towel ready. You are aware of it without looking. The bothy doorway remains a dim amber mark above the terrace, the opening still narrow, still enough to let the roof rain be heard. Steam moves between these points, the basin, the stool, the threshold, and thickens in the cooling air. It passes your cheeks in warm drifts, while finer drops settle on your brow. You let your hands spread in the water. Ripples move outward from your wrists and disappear under rain rings. Your feet find a comfortable bracing place on the pool floor, and then release it again when the water takes more of your weight. The back of your neck eases. The muscles between shoulder and spine soften another degree. You feel the difference most clearly, not in any single place, but in the way your breath no longer stops at the top of the chest before dropping. It moves lower now, fuller through the middle, and leaves without hurry. The glen beyond has nearly withdrawn from sight, but the nearer things remain exact. A drop from the eaves striking stone, the faint run of water somewhere up the path, the smell of wet cedar mixed with linen and mineral steam. the edge of the stool under the draped towel, the broad basin against the length of your body. These are enough to occupy the mind without stirring it. After a while, you shift only enough to float a little more fully, shoulders widening on the surface, ears nearer the water. Rain sounds different again from here. Less on the roof now, more on the pool itself. A close stippling all around you. Steam crosses your mouth when you exhale. The towel on the stool remains dry within its folded thickness. The one you used lies darker where it has taken on damp, but it too still keeps some warmth in its heavier parts. Nothing in the ritual needs deciding. The next return to the doorway will happen when it happens. Another towel will come from the rail. Another pause under the lintel. For now, the sequence has brought you back to broad water. Cedar near at hand. Linen prepared. Steam rising thicker against the cooling air. You settle into that known arrangement and let it carry you. The rain resting on your face, while the spring keeps working inward, deeper than thought, steady in the bones. Chapter 10. When the Glen begins to disappear. By the time you lower yourself back into the middle mirror, the shape of the Glen has already begun to loosen. It happens so gradually that you notice it only after your hands have found the familiar stone at the pool's edge, and your shoulders have gone under to their usual depth. A little while ago, the slope beyond the terraces still had lines to it. The dark run of heather, the pale break of wet rock, the shoulder of Meall Liath receiving the mist in long strips. Now those lines are less certain. Rain and steam work across one another, and the hillside gives way first at its edges, then in wider portions, until you are no longer looking at a place made of distances and contours, but at a near field of water, stone, breath, and the faintest gradations of dark. The pool feels broader for that reason, not because it has changed, but because what lies beyond it has thinned from view. Your world draws inward to the ring of wet stone beneath your palms, to the warmth pressing along your back and under your knees, to the rain touching your forehead and cheeks. When you lean a little farther into the water, your feet lose the floor for a moment, and the basin receives your weight without effort. A ripple passes from your ribs toward the far side and comes back in a smaller answer against your arm. Behind you and above, the bothy door is still left ajar. You do not need to turn fully to know where it is. The glow from within is enough. Not bright, only a muted amber caught in the damp air. A small shape of warmer color under the oak lintel. It reaches no farther than the nearest flagstones. Beyond that, the rain takes over again, and the stone path darkens into its own wet sheen. The sight of that doorway has become part of the bathing itself. You keep it somewhere in the edge of your awareness, the way you keep track of the pool lip underhand, or the step below the waterline where your heel can rest. A thread of cooler water slips down from your hairline and along the side of your face. You brush it away, then stop, because another drop follows. and then another. And the rhythm is steadier if you leave it alone. Rain to the face, spring water to the bones. The saying returns in the same place it always does, not as words you need to repeat exactly, but as the body's way of understanding the arrangement. Cool above, heat below. The brow beaded, the shoulders sunk, the spine lengthening as the water takes more of you. Somewhere uphill, beyond what you can now clearly see, the spout continues. You hear it more distinctly for not seeing it. St. Bride's spout has its own narrow note, finer than the rain, and more regular than runoff from the steps. Even through the weather, you can pick out its bright, mineral trickle feeding the upper eye. It comes and goes as the rain shifts, then returns, a small silver sound in the dark. The ear follows it upward for a moment, tracing terraces you know well enough not to need your eyes for them. The upper basin under its carved channel, the middle water around you, the lower pool farther down where the lantern was left low by the schist edge. The mist thickens again. It does not arrive all at once. It lowers in pale drifts from the hillside and passes through the rain in bands, so that one breath carries the iron scent from above, and the next carries only wet stone and heather. For a little while, the bothy glow dulls, then clears, then dulls again as the vapor moves between you and the doorway. You watch this without trying to follow any one shape. The eye begins to rest when there is less to sort. Your left hand slides along the pool edge until it finds the join between two stones. The seam is easy to recognize now. One side smoother from years of palms and forearms, the other carrying a faint grain under the skin. You rest your thumb there and let it stay. The line of the basin becomes simple through touch. Here is the edge. Here is the drop into warmth. Here is the place where your shoulder fits when you settle lower. In darkness, the hand learns quickly what the eye no longer bothers to keep. A little run of rainwater crosses the terrace behind you with a thin, ticking sound, finding the same shallow groove it found earlier in the evening. You can hear where it meets the outer stones and breaks apart. Nearer still is the smaller sound of rain striking the pool itself, each drop dimpling the surface before the heat smooths it out again. Steam rises in uneven breaths. Sometimes it brushes your mouth and nose warm as exhaled air. Sometimes it lifts clear for a few seconds and leaves the rain sharper on your skin. You shift only enough to ease one shoulder deeper. The movement is small, but the water answers everywhere at once. Under the shoulder blade, along the small of your back, around the hips, through the backs of the thighs, where they drift just above the submerged ledge. Heat reaches places that had cooled in the walk down from the doorway and the earlier pause by the cedar stool. Your hands, which had tightened slightly from the rain, loosen again. Even your jaw unfastens a little, not through effort, but because the contrast has become so familiar that nothing in you braces against it now. the glen continues to disappear by degrees. First, the high shoulder of Meall Liath is gone entirely. Then, the dark clumps of heather nearest the upper path flatten into one tone. The low wall by the flagstones remains for a while as a darker bar against dark ground, then loses its ends and becomes only a short section near the doorway light. You find yourself noticing not absence, but reduction. The way a room changes when a lamp is turned down, and only the useful things remain visible. The threshold, the nearest chair, the rim of a cup. Here, it is the doorway, the water line, the pale strike of rain where it catches the glow. You turn your head toward the bothy just enough to see the light more directly. Through the narrow opening of the door, there is only a suggestion of the interior. A warmer square of dimness. Perhaps the nearest wall. Perhaps a little of the floor stone, where damp footprints have already dried and darkened and dried again through the evening. The rail just inside will still be warm. Another of Mary's folded towels will be there. Thick linen with a faded red stripe, ready for the next threshold pause. You do not need it yet. It is enough to know the towel exists, that the rail is heating the cloth, that the doorway remains where it has always been. A faint click reaches you after a moment. Not the latch catching fully, only the small movement of the door shifting in its frame as the weather presses it inward and lets it ease back. Wood and iron, then stillness again. The sound is tiny, but in the reduced world of this hour, it carries clearly. It joins the others. Rain on slate above the room. Rain on flagstone. The thin run from the upper spout. The close, settling water around your chest each time you breathe out. You let your head tip back a little. Rain gathers at your temples and tracks into your hair. The back of your neck stays warm where the pool reaches it. Your throat remains in the cool air, your collarbones half covered, half exposed. The contrast runs in a narrow band across the body, and you can feel exactly where one temperature gives way to the other. The chest rises, the water parts, the chest falls, warmth closes over it again. There is something regulating in that repeated exchange, not because it means anything beyond itself, but because it is exact and dependable. From farther out in the glen comes the burn, lower than the spout and broader in sound, blurred now by mist. Earlier, it sat at a distance in the hollow. Now, distance itself has become harder to measure. The burn might be far off, or just beyond the next fold of dark. A sheep bell sounds once, very faint, and is gone. After that, the rain resumes its place as the larger pattern, and the rest settle underneath it. You draw one hand from the water and lay it on the wet stone beside you. The air cools the skin at once. The stone is slick from rain, but not cold enough to startle. Heat from the pool has climbed into it over the day, and what reaches your palm is a tempered warmth under the surface chill. Droplets gather at the heel of your hand and slide between your fingers. After a few breaths, you lower the hand back in, and the water receives it with a denser heat than the stone could keep. This, too, is part of the narrowing world. Not many choices, only small exchanges of temperature, each one plain enough to feel fully. The mist lowers again and takes the upper terrace from you entirely. Where the path rises toward the hottest basin, there is now only a dim suggestion of paler dark where steam and weather cross. Yet the place remains exact in your mind. You know the mineral rim under the spout, pale orange and green in daylight, and the iron scent the falling water leaves in the air. You know the short way up from the middle terrace, the angle of the step, the slick patch near the wall. Once the eye has learned a place, the dark does not remove it. It only lets the memory of touch stand in for sight. Your breathing slows to match the rain's steadiness, though the rain itself changes from moment to moment. At times, it falls in finer grains that barely disturb the pool. At times, it thickens enough to stipple the whole surface and patter on the stone lip. You hear the difference before you feel it. Then your face tells you the rest. A cooler scatter over brow and eyelids. A drop striking the bridge of the nose. Another slipping to the corner of the mouth with a faint mineral taste from the mist. You swallow, and the warm air from the water rises around your chin. The doorway light is smaller now. Whether the mist has thickened between you and it, or whether your eyes have simply given themselves over to dark, you cannot tell. It has become less a shape than a point of reference. The way a lantern, low by the lower lantern, marked the schist edge without brightening the pool. This light does the same. It does not push the darkness back. It only keeps one place named. The bothy there, the rail inside, the peat banked in the hearthroom, the blue mugs on the ledge, the door left open enough for rain to stay part of the evening. You rest deeper until the water reaches the back of your shoulders and the ears nearly meet the surface. Sound changes at once. The rain becomes finer, as if heard through cloth. The pool speaks more clearly around you. The small lapping at the stone edge, the hush of your own movement settling, the minute tapping of droplets striking water close to your temples. You could stay in this angle for a long time. The neck lets go another fraction. The muscles between the shoulder blades spread and soften in the heat. The lower back unknots where it had held itself upright on the path and steps. Buoyancy does part of the work. Warmth does the rest. When you lift your gaze again, the hillside has gone. Not ended. Not vanished in any alarming way. It has simply passed out of sight behind rain, steam, and fullening dark. Cora Frock is still there around the terraces, but it reaches you now through other means. Through the smell of wet heather, through the burn's low course, through the mist touching your face colder than the steam, through the way the air above the water cools more quickly than the water itself. The Glen becomes knowable by contact. You remain where you are, one hand on the stone edge, one arm adrift in the pool. The doorway glow behind you, the unseen spout sounding from above. The field of sensation has grown smaller, but not narrower in any troubling way. It is simply nearer. Rain on the brow, warmth along the ribs, steam passing the mouth, stone under the fingers, a dim light at your back. The next threshold pause will come later, when your skin asks for linen and the rails stored heat. For now, the dark has reduced the evening to what can be trusted without looking, and you settle more completely into that measure. Chapter 11. The last long soak. You stay in the middle mirror until the line between resting and floating begins to blur. The water has taken your weight so completely that rising feels less like a decision than like remembering you have edges. Rain touches your forehead and the bridge of your nose in a fine, steady pattern. Beneath that, the pool keeps its broader warmth around your shoulders, your ribs, the backs of your thighs. One heel slides over the smooth floor of the basin and stirs a ribbon of cooler water from below. Then the warmth folds in again. Your hand remains on the stone edge for another breath, and then another. Because the edge is there, because its wet firmness under the fingers gives the dark a shape. At last, you draw your arm in from the water and sit a little higher. Ripples travel outward from your chest and touch the stone all around with low, rounded taps. The bothy's doorway glow stays behind you, reduced now to a muted patch on the nearest flagstones. Above, somewhere beyond sight, the spout still threads into the upper basin with its bright, narrow sound. You hear it without picturing it clearly. The evening has gone past needing clear outlines. When you stand, the rain finds more of you at once. Heat streams from your skin into the colder air. Water slips from your elbows, from the hollow at your collarbone, from the backs of your knees. For a moment, you remain upright in the pool, feet planted on the stone floor, with the water at your waist and the steam moving around you in loose bands. Then you step to the edge and lift yourself out, slowly enough that your soles can feel the lip before your weight comes onto it. Wet stone, familiar now, a little slick where runoff crosses. The body knows the measure of it. You do not turn toward the doorway yet. Instead, you stand beside the broad basin with rain on your face and the heat of the pool still rising against your front. And you find that there is no need to choose sharply between one more long soak here and another lower down in the darker water. The terraces have begun to feel less like separate places than like different notes of the same warmth. The upper basin had its bright heat under the spout. This middle water carries you wide and level. Below, the lower pool gathers the dark more fully. You know them now by the way your skin knows wool from linen, slate from cedar, hot rail from rain-cooled latch. The cedar stool is a darker block at the basin's side. When you reach for it, the slats are damp on top, and still faintly warm within the grain. The folded towel you left there earlier is where you set it. One corner a little heavier with mist. You touch it only long enough to know it remains dry at the center. You rest your hand on the towel for a breath, then leave it folded. Your feet know the next few stones. Down one step, then another. The path between the middle basin and the lower one has shortened over the evening, not in distance, but in effort. Runoff crosses the second flag in a narrow stream and cools the arch of your foot. Heather presses dark and low beyond the edge of the terrace wall. Somewhere farther out in Cora Frock, where the burn runs unseen, water moves over stone with a flatter sound than the rain. The mist has taken the hillside entirely now. Meall Liath is no longer a shape, only a direction from which damp reaches you. The lantern below shows first as a lower amber point. When you come to the lower lantern, the pool is almost level with the dark around it. Only the nearest schist edge gives itself away under your hand, flat and rain-slick, with a retained trace of the day's warmth gone from its face, but still present deeper in the stone. The mineral shelf behind the basin is warmer. Your palm finds it by habit, and droplets gather against your skin, then slide away. You could lower yourself here and let the dark close in to the width of the pool, the shelf, the rain, the breath at your mouth. You do lower yourself, though not all at once. One foot first, feeling for the floor, then the other. The water climbs your calves, your knees, your thighs, and the lower basin receives you with a denser heat than the air has prepared you for. Your breath changes on the first contact, deepening by itself. You brace one hand on the shelf, one on the stone edge, and sink until the water reaches your hips, your waist, your lower ribs, then your shoulders, then the back of your neck. The lantern's low amber turns to a blur on the wet stone, and the rain keeps striking your brow, your cheeks, your closed eyelids. Rain belongs to the face, and spring water to the bones. The old saying comes back now, not as words you tell yourself, but as the shape of the contrast itself. Cool beads gather at your hairline. Heat spreads through the joints of your shoulders and down along the spine. The small of your back eases against the buoyancy. Your knees loosen. The soles of your feet settle more fully on the basin floor. One hand remains on the shelf behind you, and the stone there gives back a steady warmth through your palm, neither hotter nor cooler for being noticed. Time stretches in this lower water. The rain does not change. It keeps the same narrow touch at your forehead, your upper lip, the points of your shoulders when you shift. The pool does not change either, except where your breathing alters the surface. Steam rises and thins. A droplet gathers on the shelf edge beside your wrist and slips down without sound. Another forms in nearly the same place and follows. Water to water again. After a while, you stop counting such things. though your hand still feels each small movement through the stone. Somewhere out in the dark, beyond the terraces and the low walls, and the heather gone black with rain, a curlew calls once. The sound is far enough away that it reaches you already softened. It bends through the weather, thin and high, then fades back into the rain before you can think much about distance or direction. For a moment, the glen seems wider for having carried it. Then it narrows again to what touches you directly. The shelf under your hand, the basin around your ribs, the rain cooling the skin of your face. You remain long enough that the lower pool ceases to feel new each time you notice it. It becomes the condition you are in. When you finally rise, it is because your skin begins to ask, not for an end, but for a change. Linen next. A few breaths under the lintel. Perhaps another lowering into the broad middle water after that, where floating comes more easily than sitting. The thought arrives without urgency. You stand in the basin and let the water pour from you in warm streams. Your fingers trail once along the shelf before leaving it. Then you step out, one foot, then the other, onto the schist edge. The lantern remains low beside the pool. You leave it where it is. The path upward is darker than before, though your feet still take it with care, born of repetition rather than sight. The first step is wet through. The second holds a shallow ribbon of runoff. By the third, the air feels cooler against your chest as the heat of the lower basin falls away. Steam from the middle terrace reaches you before the basin itself comes clear, and with it, the resin scent of the cedar stool, stronger now that the wood has stood damp for hours. You pause there. The towel is still folded on the stool, thick and square, the faded red stripe dim in the lantern's borrowed light. When you lift it, the uppermost layer has cooled, but the center remains dry and faintly warm. You drape it over one shoulder without wrapping it close. Not yet. The cloth's weight is enough for the moment, and the rain still has room to touch your face. Below, the lantern you left by the lower pool marks the dark with a small amber point. You could go to the doorway. You could stand beneath the oak lintel and take the threshold pause, towel drawn around your shoulders, listening to rain on slate and the muted crackle of peat from the hearth room beyond. You can almost feel in advance the black iron rails' stored heat, the way Mary's folded towels release warmth along the neck and wrists first. But you do not turn that way yet. Instead, you set the towel back on the stool within reach, one end loosened for later, and place your hand on the middle mirror's edge. The stone is cooler than the shelf below had been. The water is broader, less insistent. When you lower yourself in again, the sensation is immediately familiar and also changed by what came before. The lower pool's depth of heat has opened you to this wider basin, so that the middle mirror now feels almost buoyant from the first moment, as if your back has already remembered how to trust it. You sit, then lean, then let your feet drift forward until the water bears more of you. Rain dimples the surface around your ears. Your shoulder blades find their level. The back of your head nearly touches the stone, but not quite. Here, the darkness is spread wider. You cannot see the glen beyond the terrace at all now. The bothy's doorway glow is only a muted warmth at one side, interrupted now and then by steam. The upper spout is still audible, a thin, bright thread somewhere above and behind. The lower lantern is hidden by the terrace wall, though you know where it stands. What remains visible in any useful sense is close. The black line of the pool edge under your fingers, the pale drift of steam crossing your chest, the rain striking and vanishing into the water around you. Breath joins the rhythm of the place so completely that you stop noticing where one cycle ends and the next begins. You breathe in, and cooler air passes the lips, while the water keeps its heat at the throat and shoulders. You breathe out, and a little steam moves with it. Rain touches your forehead. Water supports the back of your ribs. Your calves drift. Your hands, spread lightly to either side, make the smallest adjustments against the stone edge, enough to keep you centered without effort. Step, pause, lower, float, listen, warm, breathe. By now, these are not separate actions. They run together the way runoff finds one channel and then another. Never in a hurry, never stopping. From the bothy, very faintly, comes the dry tick of timber settling, then nothing more. The door must still be ajar. You picture the rail inside with its warmed towels, the blue mugs on the window ledge gone dark now, except for whatever little glow reaches them from the hearth room. The thought does not draw you out of the water. It simply places the cabin where it has been all evening, near at hand. You let your chin tip a fraction higher into the rain, cool on the face, warm through the bones. The saying returns once more, softer now, not even fully spoken in the mind. More like a pattern your body has learned over the course of the evening and can continue learning without help. Your jaw unclenches. The muscles at the backs of your thighs let go into the support beneath them. The water carries the weight under your hips, the small of your back, the length of your spine. A ripple moves away from you and returns so gently that you feel it first at one elbow, then at the other. Nothing in the night needs naming again for you to know where you are. The middle basin under you, the lower one below, the upper one fed by the spout beyond sight, the doorway under the oak lintel, the rail, the towels, the slate roof taking rain, the burn somewhere out in the dark of the glen. All of it remains in place while you continue to float, then settle, then float again, by such small degrees that the change is hardly a change at all. And so you stay, with the rain touching your face and the spring water working inward, until even the thought of later loosens, and the evening becomes simply this long immersion, this dark water, this breath moving through warm steam and Highland rain. Chapter 12. held in rain and dark. And so you stay, with the rain touching your face and the spring water working inward, until even the thought of later loosens, and the evening becomes simply this long immersion, this dark water, this breath moving through warm steam and highland rain. The broad basin carries you without effort. Your shoulders are under to their rounded tops, your arms slack in the water, your heels grazing stone now and then when you drift a little too far and set yourself right again with one small press of the foot. Above, there is no shape left to follow in the glen. The hillside has gone from outline to weight, from weight to absence. You know where Meall Liath stands because you have seen it all evening through rain and mist, and because the mist came down from that shoulder first. But now the dark has taken the slope, and the heather and the run of the burn together. What remains is nearer than sight. Rain on your brow, steam crossing your cheeks, the pool edge under one hand when you choose to find it. Behind you, the bothy is still there, though you do not need to turn to prove it. You know the depth of the doorway under the oak lintel. You know the black iron rail just inside, and the thick, folded linen with the faded red stripe warming through. You know the slate roof taking the rain in a different note from the flagstones below, and the door left not quite shut, because the weather sounds better that way. The room beyond holds its banked peat and its low red heart. The blue mugs stand on the window ledge in their row, their glaze crazed by heat and damp. One of them, perhaps, still carrying the last trace of warm herb on the rim. You do not need any of it just now. It is enough that these things remain where they always are. Rain belongs to the face, and spring water to the bones. The saying comes back without effort, not as something to remember properly, only as the shape the contrast has taken in you over the course of the evening. Cool drops gather at your hairline and run to your temples. The water around your neck presses upward with a steady lift, and the heat finds the places that carried the day longest. The back of the shoulders, the base of the spine, the deep line where the hips settle, the thighs gone weightless below the surface. When you breathe in, the air is damp and a little cooler than your skin. When you breathe out, your mouth meets steam and rain together. Somewhere uphill, hidden by dark and weather, the spout still feeds the upper pool. You hear it now, not as a clear thread, but as a bright point in the larger wash of rain. A narrower note inside the roof sound, the runoff, the distant burn. You can place the terraces from that sound alone. The hottest basin under the carved stone mouth, the broad water where you float now, the lower pool where the schist edge caught the last of dusk before dusk gave up altogether. The three of them have become less like separate places and more like different depths of the same warmth, stepped into the hill and filling steadily. A drop falls from your chin into the pool, and the rings move out under the rain marks, meeting other rings, crossing and fading. The surface is never still. yet it keeps the same level calm against your chest. If you spread your fingers, you can feel the slight difference where rain cools the upper skin of the water before the spring heat rises through it again. Your knuckles break the surface and darken in the air. Lower them, and warmth closes over them at once. The motion is so small, it hardly counts as moving. You let your head rest farther back. The nape of your neck finds the rounded stone lip. It is warmer than the night air, and firmer than the towel rail, firmer than cedar, firmer than linen, and by now your body knows the shape of it. The ears go nearer the surface, and the outer world changes its sound. Rain becomes a finer patter. The water receives your pulse at the jaw and under the ears, repeats it back to you in a muted way. Not louder, only closer. The breath lengthens of its own accord. From lower down the terrace, or perhaps from the lantern left by the darker basin, there comes the faintest metal tick as cooling brass shifts in the rain. The sound is so slight, you might miss it if you were listening for anything else. Then the rain fills the space again. A little later, from the bothy, timber gives one dry, settling click. The latch, left shy of catching, does not move. The door remains where it was, a narrow opening into stored warmth, a dim square behind the weather. You have moved among these distances enough tonight that they live in your muscles now. 3 steps from the stool to the broad pool, the turn of the path where runoff crosses the stone, the rise toward the doorway, the upper terrace tucked nearer the spout, the lower shelf, warm under the palm, beaded with droplets that gather and slip back soundlessly into the basin. If you were to stand, your feet would find the floor of the pool without searching. If you were to cross to the doorway, your hand would know where the jam begins in the dark. But you do not need to stand. Knowing the path is enough. Steam lifts from the water and disappears before you can trace it. Earlier, you could watch it drift across the dimming glen and thin into the mist from the hill. Now it rises into blackness and is gone. The same happens with the rain once it leaves your face. You feel each drop arrive, a cool touch on forehead, eyelid, cheekbone, lip. You do not follow it farther. The dark takes away the habit of looking and leaves the simpler work of feeling. Your chest rises under the water and falls again. The spring supports the ribs, the small of the back, the backs of the knees. The body settles by fractions rather than by any single release. A shoulder drops a little deeper. The jaw unclenches without announcement. The fingers uncurl. Even the skin across your brow smooths as the rain keeps touching it in the same patient rhythm. Warmth travels inward slowly enough that you stop measuring it. The scent in the air has thinned with the loss of light, or perhaps your attention has. Wet slate is still there when the breeze shifts from the bothy roof. Heather and soaked earth come and go at the edge of notice. Once, for a moment, the faint iron trace from the spout reaches you downhill. And with it, the memory of the upper basin's sharper heat, the pale mineral rim under your hand, the first lowering in. Then that too is folded back into rain. You turn one palm upward through the surface and let it rest there. Cool droplets strike the center of the hand. Warm water cradles the wrist and forearm. The contrast is exact and familiar now. So familiar that the old phrase barely needs words. Rain to the face, spring water to the bones. You could say it with the palm as well as the mouth, with the forehead, with the shoulders, with the long line of the spine resting in heat. Far off, the burn continues through Coraf Rock, though the Glen itself is gone from view. The sound comes and goes behind the rain, a lower running note under the nearer weather. Once there may be a sheep bell, muted almost at once by mist and distance, so slight it seems more remembered than heard. Then only the rain again, the spout above, the close touch of water moving against your skin whenever you breathe. At some point, you drift enough that your left hand brushes the pool edge. The stone is slick, not slippery, with a skin of warm runoff over it. You leave your hand there. Thumb on the inner lip, fingers spread along the outer curve. You feel how the basin keeps its heat in the stone as well as in the water. The contact steadies you in a way that needs no thought. Behind your closed or half-closed eyes, the dark remains the same. There is no more evening to arrive. It has already gathered fully. If you wanted the threshold pause again, it is there for you. You can picture it without leaving the pool. Stepping up from the water with the heat streaming off your skin, crossing the wet flagstones, passing under the lintel, taking one of Mary's towels from the rail and opening it around your shoulders while rain continues beyond the half-closed door. The first touch of warmed linen at the back of the neck, the heavier dry fold over the hands. A few breaths taken just inside, not to hurry in or out, only to feel the exchange complete itself. The thought of it is almost enough to bring the cloth to your skin, but the water still has room for you, and so you remain where you are. The terraces continue above and below in the dark, each basin brimmed to its own level, each fed and overflowed in its own measured way. The upper pool receives the bright, narrow pour from the spout. The lower one gathers its deeper heat beneath the lantern's small amber mark. Beside this middle water, the cedar stool keeps its faint resin scent under rain, and the folded towel on it will still be dry at the center when you choose to reach for it. The bothy keeps the mugs, the rail, the peat, the sheltered stones just inside the door. None of these things presses forward. They simply remain part of the shape of the night. You float a little, then settle again. Your knees rise closer to the surface and sink. Water strokes the sides of your ribs as the rain stipples outward from 100 points. The back of your head rests more fully on stone. Your mouth parts on the exhale, and the breath leaves warm into cooler, damp air. The body is less separate from the pool than it was when you first entered. The edges have softened, not vanished, only softened, as though heat has eased the outline. Another bead of water runs from your hair into the hollow before your ear. You lift one hand, wipe it away, and the hand returns to the water with hardly a splash. The motion sends a slow wave across your stomach and thighs, and the wave returns from the far side of the basin as a gentler lift. You feel it under your calves, under the backs of the knees, under the soles of the feet. It fades into the ordinary movement of the spring. The dark remains complete, but not empty. It contains the known arrangement of stone, roof, rail, stool, shelf, spout, terrace. It contains the rain crossing all of them at once. It contains the steam rising where you cannot see it. It contains the towels still warming in the doorway, and the mugs cooling on the ledge, and the low peat glow beyond the partly open door. It contains your own place among these things. Shoulders in hot water, face in rain, breath moving in and out. So the night goes on in the same measured way. Rain gathers and falls. The spring pours and overflows. Droplets bead on stone and return to the pools. The roof takes the weather overhead. The door stays ajar. Linen keeps its warmth on the rail. And you remain in the water as long as you like, with the broad basin under you, the dark above you, and the heat of the hill moving steadily inward.